Okay.
Good morning, everyone. We are at the Committee of the Whole work session, supporting community through quality public service. Call the meeting to order this morning at about 9:39 on Tuesday, November 18th. So we have a lot of things going on right now. We have the Committee of the Whole, and when we're finished with that, then we'll go on discussing our budget for the county. So I will let you know that when we're done with Committee of the Whole, we'll take a break so that we can move around a little bit and have our whatever we need, and then come back in, 5 to 8 minutes to open the budget meeting. So today, our work session agenda, our minutes are from the previous month of October. Presentations today is a vacation rental program update. We have a subordinate government service district discussion. And then finally, we'll have our 2026 budget discussion. Also in our packet, we have the Standing Committee's information report from the Airport Advisory Commission, the Budget and Facilities Advisory Committee, and the Highway Advisory Committee also from October. So first on our agenda, we have Andrew Beavers, who's going to update on the vacation rental program, which I dug in all of my paperwork. I've got paperwork back to 2022.
Yeah, that
When
was
we start-
right towards the end of the last committee gathering, I think.
Yes,
So
So I was reading through some of my scribbles, and a lot has changed since then.
Sure has.
So I invite you to please fill us in.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think I'm actually just gonna pop over to the laptop because, yeah, you got it. Because I have some media. So when I took over, oh sure, thank you. So I officially took the position, I believe, in September of '23. And I was originally tasked to sort of solidify the program and transition the program away from the third-party monitoring licensing service that we had been using, Granicus. Might have had a different name before it was Granicus, but it went through a kind of a number of tech sales, right? So in late 2023, with the help of Diana Lindquist, we built out the permitting portion to have all of the registration in-house to Cook County, which in effect created closer data points for us folks in the county, and also eliminated that extra cost of having a third-party software scraping system. So we started that and in 2024, and so my numbers are based on the starting in 2023, because those are the numbers I was closest to. We do have numbers previous to that. They're in a different format than my preferred format, but that's, personal preference. And so I kind of built these out just to give you a 3-year span, because those are the ones that I was closest to. So the Cook County vacation rentals, as you can see, in 2023, we had 327, 24, 359, 25, 372 our current year. Percentage changes on those, again, I didn't use what the 22 number was to create a growth number. I started with 2023, and in 2024, we had a 9.8% gain. Some interesting facts about that 9% gain is, as I took over the program and being much closer to the data and having previous knowledge as business development manager for a vacation rental program prior to my employment here, I was able to gain about 15 vacation rentals that were operating without proper licensing. So that is probably the biggest reason for that increase. And then in 2025, we see what I would say is like the new vacation rentals that have come to market. And so that number is 3.6%. The vacation rental license revenue, it's gone through a number of changes, right? When we originally started, it was $200. That stuck until, I think, 2023 or 22. And then it went up to $400. And then just last year, we increased it to $600 per year. And so obviously those numbers are going to increase with that. And again, you can see that change year over year with that small increase in 2024, really relative to some newer vacation rental licenses. And then the 2025, the big increase because of that effectively 50% increase in the vacation rental licenses. So as you can see there, it's a pretty healthy program. This is just a sort of a glimpse into the after the fact enforcement, finding vacation rentals that are operating without a license, initiating that enforcement activity, reaching out, building the case, so to speak, to show that we have proof that you did rent, and now it's time to gain compliance, right? And so this is just an example of, I guess, like, you can see the trend that the enforcements have gone down, and I think that is directly related to our closer relation to the program versus using a third-party system. This little pie chart here, this will is a placeholder, but in a couple minutes, I'll show you something neat that we're doing in collaboration with MIS and Kyle Oberg. Those are the percentage of rentals in area, kind of just a pie chart. Obviously, I think everyone knows that the vast majority of those are centralized on the west end of the county. There are still, as we can see, Devil Track, 4%, Gunflint, 6%, Grand Marais and East, kind of lump those together as an area, because at the time of creating this, that was the best I had available to me. So
I didn't realize it was like all West End.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
roughly like 65% of all vacation rentals are in Commissioner Storley's district.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah, and so as part of what we are doing here, one of the original reasons that Ginny asked me to come today was that there was some concern about service numbers, emergency numbers, and the availability to the guests in these vacation rentals. And well, I think most reputable vacation rental companies create booklets of area information, not only for these types of things, but for tourism, restaurants, hours, the like. I created this page that is a living, breathing document, can be updated at any time, but gives a great one-glance sort of informational phone numbers that is currently on our vacation rental page for the Cook County website, and will also be attached in my emails that I am confirming and communicating with for the renewal season, which is coming up very soon. Any questions at this point?
Administrator Treble?
Yes.
Question about when you send that out, will you have instructions on what you expect them to do with that data?
Yeah, so essentially I send out a number of communications leading up to and then in the renewal period. And so anytime I add something, like last year, information about the increase in vacation rental fees, I would accompany that with instructions. So it'd be an attachment to the mass email, and let them know that this is expected to be in your rental unit.
And we do have some more questions.
Oh, sure, yes.
65% on the west end, so is that for all of the different management of the timeshares?
Yeah, and so, the vacation rental numbers are very specific to units requiring vacation rental licenses, right? So, again, the West End has a lot of resort units that are managed by the resort itself. And per our vacation rental ordinance, those are not required to have a license through the county because they're on-site management. They are more heavily weighted there, but once we get into Grand Marais, there are some resort condo-style units away from there, but I would still say, yes, the vast majority, either the privately rented or the resort managed are all kind of heavily weighted on that west end.
Commissioner
Ann.
Sullivan?
Another question, and just primarily so Commissioner is aware, one of the questions I frequently get from areas where there are vacation rentals, I'll cite Voyager Point as an example, and I've talked with Andrew at length about this, is that there's concern sometimes that there are too many vacation rentals in one area compared to the number of second homes or year-round residences of property owners. And so at some point, I think when the Vacation Rental Committee comes together again, there might be an opportunity for people to talk about density and what might be appropriate in a particular area, if that's something to look at for a change in the future. But we do have these areas like the West End, but then clustered Devil Track Lake, Voyager Point,
Yeah.
Where there are large numbers of vacation rental properties interspersed with year-round residences.
Yeah, and I think that's a great transition to some of the mapping that I have done with our MIS department. So we have, just give me 1 second. We have essentially 3 maps that that we work with here. There's a map that is built for a public facing that, we could roll out at any time, and maybe if there's interest, we can just say, like, let's get that on there now. It's fully ready, it's fully updated. And then I have internal maps, which have a little more data that is obviously just for county use. Oops.
And those maps are extremely helpful. I've used those at Lake Association meetings and find that they're really helpful in the discussions that we have. So I think MAS has done a terrific job of gathering information and putting it together to make it useful for all of us.
Well, this is
Awkward.
yeah, so it's super awkward. Okay. Well, it worked yesterday. Yep.
I think it's your username. It should be A Beavers.
Oh, not the full email.
No, but it's A Beavers at. Look, I think it's wrong.
Okay, yeah, different. Perfect. Thank you. Oh, look at how wonderful it is having.
Yeah, go team.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That was awkward. Yeah, stressed out. Okay. Now we're back in.
No stress, no stress.
Okay, so here is an example of what would be the public-facing map, right? So those are vacation rentals in Cook County, right? And so, since Commissioner Sullivan mentioned the Voyager Point, we can get kind of close there. It's a little cumbersome. But in effect, you can zoom in to where vacation rentals are, right? Within each of those, it shows, is it standalone? This also has some additional resources that haven't been used yet, specifically because of data entry. Right now, you'd have to enter in the property values and all of those things individually. And so my goal for this has been just to really try and make sure that we're comprehensive and updated into an accurate reflection of what we have licensed in the county. And so, like I said, this would be the forward-facing map, which could be available to the public to access, and I think there could be some benefit to that. I have always encouraged folks to reach out to me if they have concerns about vacation rentals. I've taken a couple calls about people who are like, hey, these people are renting, and to date, I've never had one that wasn't fully licensed. That doesn't mean they're not still out there, but much like land use enforcement, we do much better when we have the community collaborating. And so I always encourage people to say, if you think this is a vacation rental or you're concerned that they're not licensed, contact me directly and you'll get an answer very quickly. Okay, so knowing you guys are busy, I'll just give a quick little show on this one. Should pop up. This is the dashboard that is on my front-facing dashboard, right? So it shows a lot of data, right? Resort versus standalone, licensed, unlicensed units, those are some active enforcement cases that I have. Those, of course, wouldn't be shown on the public-facing map, but it's a constant struggle, and you're always just looking out. I would say, by and large, we have 95, 97% compliance rate, which is very, very high. But, we don't make assumptions that they're doing it on purpose, but there always are people that need to be, at the very least, reminded that the Cook County Vacation Rental Ordinance exists, and in order to rent short-term rentals in Cook County, you need a license. So this is, by and large, very similar to that previous map. This is the one that Kyle and I have been working on. Oh, not that one. Yes, it is. So this one here breaks down the vacation rentals in Commissioner District. I thought this would be useful for the commissioners at large, and given Kyle's expertise, we were able to get this into a sort of beta testing format. So while the data is still good there's still a few little kinks that we need to work on, and this will also have some additional functionality of linking the PID directly to our e-permitting system to instantly verify that they have the vacation rental license. And so that's kind of the history of the maps there. And I guess finally, these are just some of my vacation rental breakout data, just to kind of show you my process for keeping data and using that to create these reports or just understand what's happening with vacation rentals. So all the approved licenses will live here. occasionally we'll get notes of folks that say they're not going to rent next year or that they are returning to resort management. That happened. There was a few of those when we increased the fees. This is an interesting one too, because on surface value, we approve, I think last year I approved 388 vacation rental licenses, or excuse me, 2025, we've approved 388. That number's really close to 400, right? But in 2025, these are the 24 numbers, we had 13 units that sold and needed to be relicensed. So it's important to use not only the face value data, but then also understand that 13 of those licenses are not new licenses, they're not new vacation rentals, they are just being relicensed because our program requires any transfer or any sale requires a new license. You don't get to continue on until next year with that. So I've got those broken out into, the easiest way to parse this data is using PIDs. And so Schroeder, Tofty, Lutz, and it gives you an idea of each of those PIDs, which is just maybe a little more granular look than the commissioner district stuff. So we have that for 24 and 25. Any questions, thoughts? Yeah. Commissioner Gamble. Oh, sorry, I suppose I should let you do that.
So you answered some of the questions I had relative to once you have a vacation rental unit, that the effect of the fee on participation. And usually when fee becomes something that people have to think about, they look in the context of the provision of the ordinance or
Cost
whatever, and
benefit
find
analysis,
a way to
yeah.
avoid the fee.
Sure.
And so when you monitored on that information, you can see how much transitioning as a result of increased fee. The other thing is that somebody that thinks this is a good idea and gets into it, realize what's involved in maintaining, that gets out of it. So then we see transition.
Right.
And so when we're monitoring this information to understand how many have begun and the consistency that they have longevity, and how many are transition. When we look at growth, and you touched on it, growth relative to that's reflected in the financial return because of the fees, as
Right.
opposed to growth for real growth
Right.
in number of units.
Right.
So again, just you referenced in your last slide to us, or point, is the fact that you have this information that helps you to understand the nature of vacation rental and what the trends are.
Yeah.
And the other component part of it, when you look at 65% being on the west end, understanding the context and why do we see that, and it might be because of the the ski hill, the golf course, whatever, that is influencing that. But I appreciate the fact that it's not just managing it, it's understanding.
Yeah, analyzation is, I think, an important part of this, and being so close to that data, I think it just suits me to, when you're looking at these numbers all the time, like you draw conclusions from those numbers, and you try and be as unbiased and objective as possible, right? Try not to make too many assumptions about what you're seeing, right? It's just the facts, right? And that's kind of my goal with this.
The other question I would have is that, given your previous experience, how do you see our reality here in Cook County relative to what your experience was previously?
Yeah, well, I would say that, since this program has been adopted, kind of funny, I was at Cascade Vacation Rentals when the original adoption of the ordinance was. And so as the owner relations manager and business development manager at that company, I was in charge of getting everybody licensed to start off with. And so, seeing it from the beginning to now, I feel really good about where the county is. I think it sheds a lot of light on some perceptions of vacation rentals in Cook County. While those are subjective, right, like how you feel about them is one thing, but I think what we can say is that it is not the Wild West. They're not running rampant. We have, I think, some pretty good control measures involved, and I think we have a healthy program right now, and I think that's a really good thing for the county.
So my question to you would be, we used a word back in '22 as a trigger.
Mhm.
What would be the trigger that you would say, we aren't going to go past this number?
Right, and so interestingly enough, I was reading the report from '22 in the lead up of this meeting, and at that time, at the time of the report, there were 359 identified rentals, and I think the number used in the report was 10%, a 10% gain of that. So that puts it at 393 vacation rentals, which would be the trigger. To me, I think that's a good number at this point. If we hit that number, I think it was set back then after a lot of discussion and study. I think that we should stick with that as our sort of number. It's written down. It's good to follow up on things that are written down, right? And so I would use that as sort of the number to trigger that. And in an email with Commissioner Sullivan, I mentioned that based at our current growth rate, I see that happening sometime in '27. And I think if at the end of '26 we're close, it may be worthwhile just to say, let's just move forward with reconvening in some part, right? Does it need to be a 20-person panel this time? I don't think so, because we've got the structure, we've got the basis. Really what we would be trying to do in the '27 would be really polish the program and decide where we're going for the next 5 years, 10 years.
And that would be for a moratorium or let's stop and wait a while? What would?
Well, I guess I would leave that up to the decision makers. We would probably have to look at, what that growth looked like leading up to the 393, and there could be some sort of balancing act between if we decide certain rentals should have a moratorium or certain should not.
And how do you handle unlicensed people? You have 3 of them.
Yep, yeah, the enforcement activity. So in a sense, I'm, looking through the various web postings, not really concerned about the standalone businesses. They well know that, they are required, and those are not the ones that you really worry about. Who you worry about are the individual renters. And so, in a sense, it would be identifying a renter, either Airbnb, VRBO, rent by owner. There's a number of sites that you can look through. Even Google searching place names is another way to do that. And so if I identify a rental that has an active listing, or I also look at reviews and see when the last review was, to see like how long ago it's been since there was a rental. I will occasionally click through to see if I can book a rental. And once that's identified, then the letter goes out. At least my goal is not to charge after the fact fees for everyone. Again, it comes back to that not making assumptions, right? Not everybody reads every ordinance. Should they know? Yes, ignorance is no excuse for the law, but I always give a redemption period on that first notice. Most of the time that works. Second notice, the letter states that you're now required to have the after the fact fee, which in this case is $800 in addition to the $600 annual fee. And then I haven't had any that have gone this far, but, we do have the ability to pursue that additional legal action. Typically, if we are in a situation where that second letter goes out, I then start reaching out to the Minnesota Department of Health, because occasionally the Minnesota Department of Health will have a license, we won't, or vice versa. And typically, the folks that really want to avoid the county license may be trying to avoid that Minnesota Department of Health license. And so then it becomes a collaborative effort between the Minnesota Department of Health and I. Well, I have really good relationships with the sanitarians who work in this area, Sarah, Ian, and Callie. So, I'm constantly chatting with them, sending emails about certain properties, making sure that they are on the up and up.
Commissioner White?
Oh, that brings up another question. So does that, so every property owner that wants to rent, to be part of this, do they have an inspection that is done by the Minnesota Department of Health?
Yes. Well, so there is one caveat to that. There are units in Cook County that are 7-day rentals, or they don't have running water. Those rentals do not require a Minnesota Department of Health license. So the county will allow them to rent. They still have to have the county license. And then depending on the water situation, because there's a couple reasons. One, it's you don't have running water, or two, you're on a lake draw system, and the Minnesota Department of Health to this point has not licensed lake draw systems. We know that, there's, I wouldn't say a lot, but there are a number of lake draw systems. And so in those cases, when you're on a lake draw system, the county requires a interior note that we put up, we trust that they put up in their house stating that this is not potable water and the owner is supplying drinking water to them. I think that there may be some opportunity for growth on the county side to do interior inspections, basic safety inspections for those non-MDH homes, but we would really have to have a thoughtful discussion on resource, time, and how that actually works, given a 20-hour a week job. So the 7-day rentals do not require an MDH license and thus no interior inspection. All other vacation rentals require an interior MDH inspection. And so numbers-wise, the 7-day rentals in Cook County right now are about 50. And so that would mean that, what do we got here, that 320 are getting inspections, 50 are not. And those are typical seasonal bunkhouse style vacation rentals, or like I said, those seasonal lake draw water systems.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you. Question, do you happen to know of the vacation rentals units, how many were built with that intention? And how many are residential homes that were purchased and converted?
Yeah, and I don't have that information. Worked with Assessor Thompson in sort of looking at broad data, but really that would take a pretty fine-tooth review of building permits and then cross-referencing, were they ever a homestead prior to being a vacation rental? It probably could be done, but we haven't gotten that granular as of yet to really determine what that looks like.
You used the word assumption quite a bit
Right.
in your presentations.
Yeah.
And there can be a perception of assumption maybe
Yeah.
on the part of the community, and answering these questions like, how we're just overgrowing in this particular area or
Mhm.
not, and providing facts that try to address, those that are making assumptions based upon perception.
Right.
So my point would be that that when we look at vacation rental, when we look at second homes, when we look at the effect of these things on the tourist area as to the affordability of housing, that's why it becomes an important element to understand the influence of that.
Yeah.
Because if we look at that supply-demand issue relative to the attractiveness for the tourist market, we will see that our median price is way out of line compared to other counties within the state. And so to the extent that rental, that second homes,
Right.
whatever, are depleting our residential housing market, that's an important
Yeah,
element.
and I do know that second homes far outpace short-term rentals, right? You know, I think this is an issue you see in a lot of places where tourism is the main economic driver. The reason tourism is so popular here is because it's absolutely beautiful, and we have lakes and recreation, and so, you know, those sort of amenities and, you know, the history of Cook County lend itself to people wanting to buy vacation homes here, whether or not they choose to short-term rental them. I don't know if that is a direct correlation in that median home price. It may affect somewhat, but also, you know, Lake Superior homes, like, that's a very unique piece of real estate, and those are going to command much higher prices than a county that is strictly residential workforce, right? Like, they have factories and businesses and the like.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things, as we think about this and we're thinking about budget, is, you know, what about the cost of licenses, and can we increase that? And I had confirmed yesterday with Andrew, because I had been doing some research, that our license fee is one of the highest in the state of Minnesota.
I believe it is the highest annual fee. There's a number of ways that they license them, but Cook County is the highest annual fee.
Right. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that fact as we have our budget discussion later. And then I also want to thank Andrew for his good work in finding those few non-licensed units.
Yeah.
A couple of years back, I had people in District 4 that notified me of units that they were concerned that were not licensed. Andrew got on top of it, and 2 of them got licensed right away. So he does his work very well. He's good at investigation.
Yes, I enjoy it, yeah.
When a homeowner sells
Mhm.
and they've been licensed, and the new owner comes in, does that pass on?
No,
They
no.
need to get a new one.
They need to get a new one. Yep, and like I said, just this year, we had 13 such units. Most of those turnover units are in Caribou Highlands condos, you know, that the resort style where they've decided not to use resort management. But there are homes that were vacation rentals, they're bought by another vacation rental. And I would say too that adversely, there are homes that were vacation rentals that the people who bought them don't want other people in their house, and they want it just for themselves, you know, and that's something that happens as well.
Any other questions?
Yes. If an owner owns, each property itself is licensed, not the owner, because there's, you know, we know there's people that own 4 or 5 different buildings, in different sites.
Sure.
So each site is licensed.
Each site and each unit. So if you have 2 rentable units on a single parcel, required to have 2 licenses. And that's one of the ordinance changes we made. We really defined that in essentially every zone except the RCR zoning district, we are limited to 2 units per parcel, irrespective of the size of the parcel. Doesn't mean you can have 2 duplexes. You can have 2 rentals. If you have 2 duplexes, the other 2 can't be rented, right? And then the RCR, you're allowed to have 3 licenses.
RCR means?
Resort Commercial Residential.
Commissioner Mills?
The 3 sanitarians, are they local?
No,
Okay.
they're all out of Duluth.
Okay.
So they're making trips up, and so a lot of what I do in preparation for that, taking those initial phone calls about people wanting to get licensed, what they need to do, created a worksheet and a helpful handout, because some of the things where people think, oh, this is a super neat place, it would be great for a rental. Well, the windows don't need egress, and you're not going to get licensed, or you need to have your well. I guess the other thing, not to take up too much time, but septic compliance. That was the other thing in 2023 that we officially took over, is the septic compliance component for all vacation rentals in Cook County. You have to have a compliant septic system in order to get approved for a license. And as part of that, in the last 2 years, we have initiated over 40 septic inspections for vacation rental homes that, if not for that program, they wouldn't have had to get an inspection, right? Unless they pulled a building permit or whatever. But, I think that really helps us keep an eye on, the vitally important groundwater supply here in Cook County.
To that end, a septic system is built on the number of bedrooms, assuming an occupancy of.
Right.
And so what do you do then when vacation rentals, the people are willing to like camp inside a nice place and they bring up 8 people or whatever, and the
Right.
system is only built 2 bedrooms and whatever the usage is for that.
Right.
And if this is a regular event that happens, a couple of things. What do the neighbors think about it if there are neighbors? And I don't know if you have that answer. And 2, would that require an upgrade of their septics?
I would say it could. So the Minnesota Department of Health sets the occupancy based on the size of the bedrooms in the rental. So while, yes, you probably could bring a whole posse of 12 people up and you could stack them like cordwood, and that would be bad. I would say those are outlier events as a whole. That said, our real guardrail is those common or more frequent septic inspections, right? That's going to allow us to verify if this system is still healthy. And so it is something that we're looking at relative to occupancy, but because the Minnesota Department of Health is in charge of all of that interior safety, they kind of set that, and that's set on the size of the bedrooms and what they can have. We know that there's additional, you could have a pull-out couch or whatever, right? I think most of the time, and given our area, we're not your typical frat party destination, thinking Nashville or Vegas or whatever, right? But we still want to be conscious of that, and I think that was one of the reasons we chose to take over that septic compliance, is to keep an eye on that and see if we're noticing a trend of septic systems failing early, blown out septic systems, the like.
And that applies to those sites that have pit toilets that are not of,
So,
that's their,
yeah, a vacation rental license would not be approved for a pit toilet. That is a non-conforming unit, and so we would require them to have a biffy on site or a proper vault. Yep, that would not be a compliant septic system.
So for a matter of time, I'm going to wrap this up. Just to give you a little background on the county service numbers, I originally went to my keyboard and said, I just visualize myself in different places, and if an emergency comes up, other than 911, who would I call?
Yeah.
So Mike and I discussed putting something together like a little magnet thing to put on their refrigerator or wherever. Then I went to Andrew and said, here's what Mike and I are talking about.
Yeah.
And then we came up with the idea of PDF.
Yeah.
So it'll go out to all the owners, it'll go in their guest book, or they could put it on the refrigerator too.
Yep, and
So,
like I said,
you
it
know.
is also available on our main county site as
Yeah,
well. So
yeah.
we're gonna really try and make sure everybody has access. to
Right
it.
down to auto repair, because sometimes we get in trouble with our cars.
I'll tell
when
you
we're
what,
here.
you need to know
So, anyway,
where to get
that's-
your tire
yeah.
patched.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much. If
Thank
there's any
you.
other questions, you know where Andrew is.
Yeah,
And
I'm always
appreciate
happy
it.
to have smaller discussions, one-on-one, email. Please use me as a resource. I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to shift chairs now and go on to our next topic, which is going to be discussion on the subordinate government service districts. Cord. There we go.
How much space do we have?
I'm running out of
Yeah. Yeah.
I had hot pink, but I decided not to.
All right.
Okay, before we start.
Yes.
Is everybody here?
Yeah, we'll engage
Oh, yeah.
the gallery.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. We'll engage the gallery as needed.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do a little preface to this.
Have at it, please.
Okay. So I appreciate you coming before the committee of the whole again. We have all received about 5 concerned folks in the county, and I know maybe they're listening, or maybe they will in the future. I think when we discussed this earlier, it was like, well, we're gonna talk about it, and then we'll take care of everything this winter, and then we're gonna look at the following winter. And is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, but then when I looked at the timeline, it's like, oh my gosh, this is really going fast.
It does, because there's statutorily, we have to adhere to posting certain things. And so that's why, again, the timeline's not permanent, it's just an example of what that looks like. And so that's why, as we talk about this, every month that it proceeds, pushes all of that further and further out into potentially now, another year of going through it. So even if we left here today and said, let's wait till January, and maybe we'll chat again in January, you can take all those dates and now move them 2 months at that point. And so that's what it does go fast, admittedly, but nothing's decided. We're still here, we're still talking. But first, I want to appreciate, or give some appreciation to the auditor's office and the MIS office as well for helping us put all of this information together. Because this isn't just the highway department. We're the tail end of this, sure. We're the one that holds the policy. There's a lot of work that happens to set these up, and that is actually an ongoing thing that doesn't get captured or doesn't even get known about really with these. So like you had mentioned, this is kind of the second cow. We're bringing some information. I hope everybody has the handouts. If you don't, should I pass these around? We have everything?
Should have
everything.
Okay, let's pass it here. Pass them around, grab one if you want. I'm not going to sit here, I'm not going to read the entire packet. There's a lot of information here. One of the things that we got last time was if we could have maybe an easier digestible pros and cons. And so we put that together up front. But really, I think where I want to go with this is we have limited resources, right? We're a county of limited resources, and we're expending them on non-county affairs. Death by 1,000 cuts is a good way to think about it. How many little things do we want to be a part of that we don't have to be? It's a capacity issue. It's not a capability. We could plow every road in this county, Forest Service, DNR, private, that's great. But you can imagine what that would do to our level of service. You can watch it go way down. Something that we've talked about a lot, and I've heard discussions about even during our budget cycle, this is a non-mandated program. We don't have to do this. No other county does this. Why are we doing this? And the other thing I wanted to add is I had some time to pull some information from the recorder's office, and so thank you, Holly, for walking me through some things. But I spent maybe half an hour digging through some stuff, and I found at least a dozen HOAs and POAs that exist, that have existed for as long or longer, that have different lengths, different numbers of people. This program exists without our involvement already. People are doing this in this county. And again, I spent 30 minutes and I found a dozen of them. So what's that to say if you actually exhausted a list? How many would come up then to say that people are doing this already? why are we involved? Why do we have to be involved in this? And so, I understand, I'm empathizing with people where this is going to affect them. It's going to affect maintenance on their roads. I get it. But there are other options that exist, and it would give those people a lot more freedom, a lot more choice, and a lot more control over their roads. And we've talked about that at the last time too. So I guess my question is just, why do we need to be involved? This exists. This already happens everywhere in Cook County already. Why do we need to be doing this? So that's where I land with it. There's a ton of information here. I'm sure you guys have gotten a lot of information. So, yeesh. Well, have at it.
Commissioner White?
Goes to values and
Man.
what we can afford. And we are not, what's the cost for people to create an HMO? How much, I do not know.
Right.
But, you're going to have to get a lawyer, and you're going to have to do all of that, and you're going to have to get all the property owners a certain percentage to agree to an HMO. It doesn't automatically.
HOA.
HOA,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
HOA. I don't know how that process works, but it can't be straightforward and easy.
I guess I would counter with, if there's that many other people that have figured it out without our assistance, there's clearly a process. But if we need to pull together information to help people through that process and say, here's step 1, here's step 2. And we've talked about that. If you look at that timeline, there's some additional steps in there about updating the property owner's resource guide. I just hate the acronym, PORD. But to have information in there to help people do that, to do just that, to say, we're here to help you, to set this up, but that road is not our responsibility. This is a private road. Or even if it's a the Forest Service road, that's their responsibility then. It's not ours.
And if I can add to that real quickly, I just want to mention that if the board does choose to not continue to support these, we would want to make sure that we had a plan in place.
Oh, yeah.
To assist the community in creating HOAs or have the support to make the changes that are necessary. So we
100%.
wouldn't just pull this from folks without making sure there is a solid plan in place.
Absolutely.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the discussion on this. I think it's just generically, it's a healthy thing that decision makers and departments and the community, that we have a discussion. I think overall, we've talked about the fact that we need to step back and we need to take a look at what are we responsible for in governance? What's mandated and what have we done? But there has been growth, and it's always difficult to take away from something when somebody's had that.
Right.
So that's a difficult thing. What you try to do is you try to respectfully come alongside and communicate where we're at. We can look at non-mandated, and when I talk to other commissioners in other counties, say, do you do this? We don't. I said, why don't you do it? Don't you care about these? No, it's a matter of priorities. We just don't have the money to be able to fund everything. And so we're going to wrestle with things that are going to be difficult, but what we want to see, as to your statement, is we want to see that we empathize and we're here to support you, but we can't do things the way we did in the past because it's a matter of priorities and limited resources. And so we use comparables, we demonstrate where we're at, we demonstrate the supporting information that informs our decisions, and that's just true overall. That's stewardship of what we've been entrusted with. So it's challenging, but I appreciate the conversation, and I hope that the community sees that we don't approach this lightly. It's not a matter of the highway department saying we want less work. It's a matter of having to do your due diligence relative to their limited resources.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the questions I have for commissioners is, how much have you spoken with constituents that are part of subordinate governmental service districts in your district? What kinds of conversations have you had? Have you gone to their annual meetings? I'm just interested in the level of communication.
Commissioner White?
None. But what I wanted to say was, things, to Commissioner Gamble, things have changed way back when. Did the county not mow cemetery lawns everywhere? A lot of them, and we don't anymore?
Well, it's a, I'm not, do you,
That's an
maybe?
example, yes.
I think that's a wonderful example. I
We
can
used to
give,
do that, but how long does it take to drive from Grand Marais up to Maple Hill
Mhm.
to mow the lawn, come back down, whatever it takes?
Mhm.
And that was sort of abandoned because we don't have the personnel.
Mhm.
I mean, this was a conversation with the last director, with Brian,
Mhm.
that it took a lot of time
Mhm.
and for transporting of equipment and the personnel out there to mow a lawn. That was an example of where things had to change. I believe we need to have this discussion, but we need to include the community that lives on these roads and that have them or do not have them or would like to have a subordinate governmental service agreement. I got it. Now I have to go to the
Yeah.
acronym to figure out what the words are. You got me backwards. So I think we need to have public discussion on this. And if this pushes everything out and we are then committed to another year, so be it. But we have a responsibility to give our taxpayers, even those that live on the street in town, an opportunity to hear and to share in this conversation. I think it's really important. As you have said at the advisory committees, there's at least one district that has operated without any interventions for more than a decade. They just hum along. It works really nicely. And
Right.
the primary problem now is getting contractors who want to do the work.
it's a great example. I think, and one other example I want to bring up from another county about services, things that might have existed forever and gone away. I think it's Itasca County. Sorry if I'm misspeaking which one. They used to plow driveways. The county would plow your driveway. And they are working, well, can you imagine?
They better.
But so it's that type of thing where that's getting phased out now for obvious reasons. But you're trying to figure out what do you have capacity for. To your point, Commissioner Gamble, of everything is important, yes, but at the end of the day, we have to ultimately be the ones to choose where we expending these resources. Yeah.
Yes, Commissioner Sullivan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the things, and I really support what Commissioner White said, is we need to notify our communities. I've had relationships with my subordinate governmental service districts, with the exception of one, for some time. I attend their meetings. But I would like to recommend that we have a letter that comes from all three departments. I think the focus is on the highway department, that this is our highway engineer doing this. It's not his decision. This is a recommendation of multiple departments. So I would recommend we have a letter on county letterhead that comes from all three department directors, indicating the concerns, sharing some of the data. It could be electronic and could go out to the person who is that connection for the roads with Matt. And then we give people some time to respond, and maybe the idea of putting a QR code on the county website so we could get feedback that way, because some of these people are seasonal, so they aren't here to necessarily come to public comment, but they could have input. And so I agree that it's important for constituents, and not only those that are on a subordinate governmental service district road, but for other community members as well to respond.
And I'm face-to-face, in person, that's the way that people feel more comfortable, and that really builds community. It's not as isolating, and it doesn't mean that I'm sure there's not going to be any sort of consensus on this, but to Administrator Treble's, is that right? Never said that before. Anyway, to her
It's
comment.
not trouble, it's trouble.
Yeah.
Okay then, she's very personal.
Yeah.
Personable. So anyway, we need to come up with options and a step-by-step how one would go about doing that. Personally, in a neighborhood with 12 different property owners off of a line, off of it was our driveway. It's not easy, and even when it starts out good, when property is sold, everything falls apart really fast, and then what do? And because that requires, I know that, I believe it's Stonegate, and if they're listening, and if I'm misspeaking, this is a positive thing I'm saying, that they have it in their homeowners association for that community, for that gated community, that they lay out the responsibilities for the road maintenance. So,
Attorney Peterson.
Oh, I just was gonna follow up on that, in that we do have at least 2 local options here between Byers, Heron, and Tyson Smith. If property owners are looking to reach out to attorneys, about how they would set up a property owner association or homeowner association, there are attorneys in Duluth as well. While the county can't endorse any particular attorney, there are local options, and people can be proactive about looking for what their options are and their obligations that way.
Good.
And just to answer Commissioner Sullivan directly, I have had conversations with one SGSD in my district, but I've had communications from others from outside my district. The biggest concern that I've been hearing about is the collection of dollars. And so
Well,
I
would-
know there's going to be some maybe digging into details and what options we might have, but that's the number one, I would say.
Yeah.
And I guess I would say that gets back to kind of the crux of the question, is these are non-county roads. So what is our responsibility in meddling in neighborhood politics in non-county affairs? And I leave that to you all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's our community, so if it's
Right.
private or if it's public, like,
But
we still
then-
care about our people, and so
Yes.
that's what I'm saying, is like,
Yes.
I'm just sharing their number one concern is collection of
Totally.
dollars, and so
Right.
if that's a real struggle, is there a way for us to accommodate that and maybe alleviate other difficulties that we have in
Right.
managing?
I think
SGSDs?
there could be a layer to this, and I'll preface it with, I don't think it's a good one, but a layer of this is you remove the highway department's involvement, but then everything gets dumped upon the auditor and the MIS offices, and I don't know that we're necessarily solving anything outside of you hearing from me. So, because there's still, I'm sorry,
No,
yeah,
go ahead.
yeah.
Commissioner
One of the
Campbell?
big questions on that is, I've looked a little bit on that. I can't find authority for that kind of activity outside of an SGSD. So,
But can
to me,
we,
it's
I'm
an
sorry,
open question.
so, but, I mean, can we have an SGSD, but only collect the dollars?
That I don't know.
That's the,
either.
because we have that authority.
Well, that's what we do.
Well, we also manage the,
fiscal administrator is the highway department,
Yeah.
Right, so we do collect the dollars. We're
Yeah.
there, and there's a little management, but, that component, the main thing we do is collect the money, distribute the money, and, try to get contractors to come and do the work. And
And the other piece I would add to that is if we actually collected all of the time that we spent on this, that it would be a lot more expensive for these units. So, I mean, that's another option. However, we're still in that place of having to collect the funds, and we
Right.
would likely, I don't know if I could guess on this, but I'm guessing that maybe half of the time is collected at this point.
I think we did we upped the setup fees based on a recent, in the last year or two, conversation of trying to capture everyone's time. So those setup fees went up. There is an annual administration fee that's based on a percentage of their levy take, and so that accounts for some of it. I think the issue is when issues do come up, now that time is not accounted for. And it's not an if, it's when. Every year, there's always something. This year has its own trials and tribulations that we are working through. But I think the point, money is one component of it. And like I said, the Forest Service has been willing to pay us money to plow their roads. It's not that. It's the capacity. It's here's another thing that we are responsible for and dealing with, that isn't even a cut and dry, clear, this is an easy thing. These are messy. These are messy processes, and any type of way to try and clean it up, I don't see, there's no clean way to do it. I genuinely don't see it. We live and breathe these, since their inception, since I've been here, and you're looking at this, trying to do the mental gymnastics of how can we make this work. How it makes it work is you make them county roads. And then you say, there, we're responsible for them now, end of story. But you know what that involves then, hiring staff, buying another truck, that type of stuff, where you're just you start to see this cost. And I'm not opposed to that, but that's a big conversation, Now you're not just talking about moving a couple of bucks here and there, you're talking 400,000 between a person and a truck. On top of now, we have to assess all those property owners that live on that road to get that road to a standard, because we're not gonna take over a trail in the woods. I'm just being honest. I have no intention of doing that. You guys can decide what you want, obviously, but my advice would be to not do that.
The only way that we have come up with to solve all the issues with SGSDs is to make them county roads. Because you have inefficiency, SGSDs are inherently very inefficient. It's just a game of phone tag, essentially. I'm the go-between. And then we can't mobilize any of our equipment on them. So, we're hamstrung, essentially. What we're good at doing is mobilizing on roads and fixing them, and we can't do that, so.
So there's that point, because I recall one multi-meetings about one of these districts where the contact person leaves the county for the winter.
Mhm.
And that's the spokesperson, but not available to be spoken to.
Mhm.
So if the county were to say, we either speak to this person or we contract is null and void right now, that, I don't know. You're dealing with a bunch of people that the only reason they actually might talk to each other is because, for this reason. Otherwise, not that they don't like each other, but they don't, doesn't matter. But, yeah.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with the letter. What I would say is that just process here is hugely important.
Mhm.
And so whatever we can do that demonstrates that there is an open, receptive, transparent process
Mhm.
is going to be huge, because you're dealing with a delicate thing for people that
Mhm.
just see change as being intimidating.
Right.
If a letter is sent, then I think relative to the process issue, if you identify opportunity for public comment, we intend to have an opportunity to listen to you. Also, here's resources, if we have local attorneys to do this, or take an operating group. I know Rosebush Lane, and we lived there, and that was something that they, handled it. If we have one that's working really well, ask them if they'd be willing, to field questions from those that might wonder, how can this work? So whatever we can do to demonstrate our genuine intent to help people in this transition, and I think that process will lend to the integrity of their willingness to empathize with where we're coming from. But a letter should be a letter that includes resources and reflects our identifying with the challenge that this can provide, but here's resources, and we're trying to be proactive. I think that'd be beneficial.
And then Treble?
Thank you. And we can absolutely do that, but we wanted to bring this here today because of the timeline. So just understand that then the county would likely have to engage another year so that we had time to, go ahead.
It depends. And so that's where I think with some of this, and I think if I'm sensing things right, there's some is it a town hall, or do we just want a QR code, public feedback? Because I think some of that stuff, if what we're talking about is just an opportunity for feedback, I mean, we can talk with Rowan and company and get something spun up and posted probably, I don't want to speak for you guys, but pretty quick. And so, if you leave it up for 30 days, that gets us to December. Now we're talking, January, and there's a couple of board meetings. I don't know that we need another committee of the whole, but a couple of board meetings there where you're saying now we've had 30-plus days of public comment. Depending what the mood is, we can handle, a cow in a board meeting in January. That still sticks with timelines in here. You move everything 2 months, but it still sticks with the initial conversation about we'll get through this winter with the intention of not doing it next winter, and we'd still be okay.
Summer potential.
Or, yeah.
I think it's both.
Okay.
And the point is that I think the more information that we can provide through the mechanisms that you reference is important, because I think it's good to be proactive in informing so that it's coming and now we inform. I think provide as much information as we can so that discussion is channeled in the right direction.
And I think, the hub would be a great central location. I mean, it's large enough to accommodate all sorts of.
For an
people.
in-person meeting.
For an in-person.
Oh, okay.
In-person, particularly in the wintertime, because the streets will be plowed. You might not
Right.
get there if it's really snowy, but you can, I think make it as easy as possible, but we have to do more than one way to get information out.
Sure.
I was just looking at the area in the west end. I'd have two, Evergreen Road and Murmur Creek, but I would want something in the west end separate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I was just going to say, a letter from all three departments that goes out, a QR code, and some in-person opportunities, and then gather that information, review it the first half of January, and then put it on an agenda for the commissioners to deal with at our last meeting in January. So that whatever the decision may be, based on the feedback we get, we have enough time to inform, to educate constituents, and be fair.
Absolutely.
The feedback I'm getting from at least the association, one association in my district, is that it feels like the decision's already made before we're engaging them. And so I feel like we do need to push this back. I don't think we should just send out a letter and a public notice. I think we need to have targeted meetings with the representatives together so that we can all talk about it, because more than one meeting number one will be venting. You guys are taking this away from me, that's just going to be, we're going to have to clear through a lot of things. And then meeting number two, we can get more in those details, into the numbers, why we're doing this, and then just try to work through what challenges, barriers they're having and what solutions there might be. And that just sounds like a really long process, but I agree with the direction you want to go. I just think it requires a longer process, much to Commissioner Gamble's point.
The letter, though, could help people understand why we're having a meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
You don't
agree.
just want to go
I
to a
agree.
meeting. You need to
Yes.
have the
Yeah.
preface
Yes.
of,
I think
this is what we're thinking.
the more that we can communicate, the better, and to underscore, because if the feedback is we think you've made a decision and you've excluded us from the process, we're trying to be as inclusive as we can. And once you cultivate trust, you don't have to go through as many of these things. And it's difficult when things are taking away, but it's why we make decisions that are focused on what we're dealing with, but in the bigger context, it's cultivating that relationship. So when it comes to these decisions, they know that our process demonstrates integrity and inclusivity.
And to that end, we need more numbers. I mean, and I know that, Lisa, you've been asked, and for all the departments, how much time is spent, really spent, like estimate from here to there? I mean, whatever it is, it's part of your job, but how much time is spent on this mandated service?
Non-mandated.
Or non-mandated service. And
Very
should we, what would it cost if the county actually picked up all of these different things? How much for another person? How much for benefits? How much, how much, do we need another building for more equipment? Like, because we'll have to buy some more equipment perhaps. I don't know, but that's information that should be there. And then, a decision, anyone listening, has not been made, but the conversation needs to be had. Because then as taxpayers, how much can taxpayers bear for a particular group to have their road taken care of and not another's? I mean,
When we looked at just, and this is rough because we don't track it by the half hour like we do other things, I think you're gonna, you turn penny wise, pound foolish at a certain point with this type of thing. The best estimate we could come up with was, at least for our department, it's about a wash, what we intake versus what we spend. And so now it's the effort. So financially, there's that component. And as I've said, it's not just that. It's the capacity. It's the
Doing other things.
we're not doing other things then. I would much rather have Matt and Jesse and my staff and Lisa working on things related to our county system. That needs enough help, much less us trying to now weigh into neighborhood politics, frankly, on private roads that, again, in my opinion, I don't think we have any business weighing in on. We're the government trying to decide who's a duly elected official somewhere when it's just Joe saying this and Tom saying this, and okay, and you're sitting there spinning your wheels on this going, well, I got to go grade 60 and decide how much gravel it needs. To me, that's where we should be spending our time, is that. Sorry.
And also, I would really like to speak to the tremendous amount of work that our auditor's office and MIS spend on this. I am familiar a little bit with what, for example, Courtney Bernier does, and I can't imagine the workload this creates for her. And I would really want that acknowledged in some of this.
Please.
It is a tremendously complex task to manage those tax payrolls. You're welcome. Commissioner Hamel?
I think the other thing that's important to recognize is that we are elected as commissioners to be representative of our constituents. We have a fiscal responsibility and a commitment to our departments to inform us. And so the fact that departments come to us and inform us, that stewardship responsibility that's entrusted to us means we need to listen to both sides of this and weigh it in the context of our fiscal responsibility and the level of service that we provide. If we look at saying, well, we have no options, so therefore the highway department needs to do this, then if the costs associated that are honest and represented fairly, then as decision makers, we can look at the options. But as you say, it's not just a financial, it is a focus on what we're entrusted with. So we as decision makers want to hear, and we invite departments to come and inform us. So we're making informed decision, and it needs to be evidence-based, not emotionally driven.
Correct.
and also, as I'm jumping in here out of line, people, maybe not so much anymore because there's been a lot of discussion about this, but people, when they buy property, little 20 acres in the woods, and isn't this nice, on a gravel road, and then they find out the county's not going to plow it. What do you mean they're not going to plow it? Years ago, there were some folks we built a house for, and they never considered that the 2 miles into their 1 mile driveway was on them to plow. And it was kind of a wake-up call. Because, so there's so the realtors need to be brought in on this too.
If I may speak, Madam Chair. We started probably in 2018 or so, working with the Realtors Association because we were getting angry phone calls at the highway department because people were unaware. And so the realtors have gotten a lot more proactive in reaching out. They have our actual road list so that they know what roads are ours. And then if they're unclear, we still get the occasional phone call asking for clarification. It's not perfect by any means, but we did reach out, as I said, a number of years ago to really foster that educational component.
We need danger signs on plowed road.
New signage. Administrator Treble?
Thank you. I'd just like to add one more comment, which is, I know this is a challenging discussion, but we brought this intentionally for the reasons that you mentioned, Commissioner. As the county administrator, I see it as my role to make sure that we're bringing information, to make sure that we are first focusing on our core services for the county. And I know that we provide a lot of discretionary funding. I know that we provide a lot of non-mandated services, and that's okay. But I think it needs to be reviewed by the board, and there need to be intentional decisions about what we can afford to do. So I think this is a great conversation for us to have today. I look forward to the budget conversation, which we're going to have next, and this really kind of aligns nicely with that discussion and future decisions on what we can afford to do as a county.
So what I'm hearing is that we'll have a letter to go
Yes.
out to inform people, especially folks who live away
For that,
of the annual the public meeting would
So-
be posted so that if they wanted to come up to join it, they could,
Mhm.
depending upon where we have it.
right. I just want clarification. What should this letter say?
I
'Cause
think
we keep saying letter,
give
but
an
like-
outline, and we have to have the components so that that letter is substantive if we're gonna send something out.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of components we talked about. Provide resources, provide opportunity for public, discussion around the county, and inform, and projected costs and things. So there's a lot of components, but I think an outline should be established, and then a draft should be reviewed
Right.
and approved prior to sending.
And
Commissioner
I'm
Sullivan?
happy to help and work on that, if you want any commissioner input. And I would also say, again, the focus needs to be not just on the highway department, but
Sure.
on all the other departments that are engaged and involved. Again, when I'm listening to constituents, I'm hearing highway, 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 and that's not all that it is.
Is,
Madam Chair, it might be advisable if we, right now, just put the outline of what we'd like to see in that letter, so that there's direction.
yes.
Okay.
That would be very, very helpful, because then we know, because I thought I had an idea, but it seems like we've jumped around a little bit in a process, and I want to make sure that we have that in there. Is this a letter from commissioners? Is this a letter from our departments? That seems a little, or is this?
And my question is, could we provide information on the town halls
Mhm.
and have
Yes.
the opportunity to present information at that, and
Mhm.
keep the letter more general about, here's information regarding the town halls, we will provide more information at that time.
That could be great.
And we can also put some information potentially on our website to make
Mhm.
sure that it's accessible. But I wonder if maybe that's the first step, since
I
we
think
are
an
going to
out-
have the
I
listening
think
sessions.
that's good. I think an outline of what we will be providing.
Right.
Which is going to be resources, legal resources, other, operating entities that have got it under control. I think that's another component that should be in it.
Mhm.
The dates, the fact that we're covering the county and setting that up so that we're making it convenient and accessible.
Mhm.
And I think some of the realities relative to cost and prioritizing, and the comparables as to how do other counties do this. I think that's an important thing, but just as elements, you know what I'm
Yes,
saying?
absolutely. So another piece too with this, so I like that. I think that letter can get super thick if
Yeah.
we start trying to throw everything in there. I think the idea of a letter saying we're gonna have a town hall, maybe in 2 different spots. We can go just a little west of Grand Marais, we can go a little east of Grand Marais, catch.
In Grand Marais.
We could do one there. I'll do as many as no. 3 sounds like enough.
Certainly need to be where the
Or up the trail.
majority.
We can see where everything is. There's a lot up the trail, there's a lot west
There are a
end.
lot up the trail, but many
Yeah.
of them are seasonal.
Well, right, and so there's,
So those
That's-
people are gone, so that's why I say letter and a QR code or
Yes.
some way
I
to
like the Q-
electronically capture information from seasonal people.
I
And
think-
they get, and people that are gone can submit,
Right.
Right.
you know, succinctly, whatever, you know.
Precisely.
that
So
will-
you had mentioned dates. Are you
Mhm.
talking about the timeline that's provided?
I'm saying we should say
the town
dates
hall.
in there so that it's giving a heads up as to when we are gonna.
So the
have
dates
these.
could be like, as an example, it'd be like, we're gonna be on the west end, December 5th. We're gonna be on the east end, December 7th.
Yeah.
And we'll, if we think
Up the
something's,
trail.
and we can look at, maybe what we'll do is look at a map of where our districts are and try and choose like 2 spots
Yeah.
that are kind of in the middle of all of that or something. And try, no?
You need a third spot.
Okay, third
The only
spot.
thing in the middle is the town.
So something on the east end.
East
Yeah, I
and
agree.
west, or at least as far as
East, west,
Colville.
and middle.
Okay, so we'll do 3, let's see.
East, west, and north is what I'd recommend.
Sure. Location to be determined. But at that town hall, what is where, and maybe it's an opportunity to talk with those 2 local folks and see if they can't attend. And maybe they already have a packet on, here's step by step on how to set up an HOA. I don't think we're under any illusions that people are gonna come here and be like, hey, thanks for getting rid of my services. Now I got it, you know, like, that's not,
Yeah.
I understand that, and to the point of, you know, yeah, the first one's just gonna be venting, why are you doing this? But I think to the point of, you know, it's the same thing in the budget discussions where you're trying to prioritize, what do you wanna do? And, you know, what's a cut look like? And you're going, well, I can't do everything. So something's gotta give. But anyway, so I think that letter makes a ton of sense. Maybe what we can do is work with us, Brady and Rowan and and we'll try and get something drafted. I'll send it to you.
Sounds great.
Yeah, and then we can just kind of keep it moving. I know it seems fast, but we're, you know, but I think if we do this letter, the QR code, I think is a great idea. Open that up, 30 days, 45 days, get input. And then, you know, see if we still can't kind of hit end of January-ish, depending how things go, and to see, you know. And to the point of a decision already being made, yeah, we are proposing dissolving these. But that decision isn't made, this is our proposal. So of course, we're leaning that way, I'm not denying that. But,
It's our intention.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, but, you know, something could come out, I don't know what, but we'll see. So, okay.
I
So
think we
you were,
should-
you suggested something in December, I'm just gonna say we're gone the 7th through the 10th to AMC. So,
Right.
you know, if you're pushing it out to
I was just
January,
throng
yeah,
dates out.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
you know,
We'll work
Just
with
let
you.
you know.
Absolutely, yeah, I'll see you down
Yeah.
there at
I
AMC
think
too.
we should have food.
Oh,
I think we should have
definitely.
snow cones and dirt dessert.
No, they're gonna throw it, they're gonna throw them at us, we do that. Yes, that sounds great. Yes.
Thematic.
I just really think I respect the desire to get this, you know,
Mhm.
tidy. And like I said, I agree with the direction that you want to go. I am worried about the timeline.
Sure.
Because,
Season.
and right, all of them. I mean, there's
Sure,
the 2
they-
different
they
ones
plan
and
it
the
during the
holiday.
holiday season.
Yeah, so
Right.
there's a lot going on, and that doesn't mean that can't happen.
Right.
But I think, you know,
Right.
I'm hoping, I don't want to drag you guys through another season of
Mhm.
difficulties, but I really do believe it's going to take some time to get the back and forth that's going to be required, because the emails that I'm hearing is, I mean, it's kind of like, you know, countering points to what your list has, and then being like, see, we need, you know, it's just,
Right.
it's going to be a back and forth.
And
Totally.
it's not an emergency.
Right.
No.
I
Right.
mean, it's not an emergency.
Yeah.
So if you have to suffer through, which you are not suffering through,
Well, Matt,
you're juggling through
I'm not.
another
Talk to,
season.
yeah, talk
Somebody
to,
else
I
in-
think there's,
Yeah.
no comment, there we go.
But the point is, out of respect for our people in this county who have successfully navigated and worked
Mm-hmm.
with you through these years, it's the least
Yeah.
to give everyone conversations. And if you
Wholeheartedly.
need to do it if you need to do it one more year,
Mhm. Yeah.
I'll bring you some chocolate.
Thank you.
wow.
Administrator
Thank you, and I would just add, if we do, if the timeline is such that we need to do this another year while a decision is pending, we may have to bring forward some other recommendations on what to do in that time frame,
Mhm.
which might be collecting all of our time
Mhm.
It might be hiring a part-time staff to manage this. I'm just throwing stuff
Sure.
out there. I'm not sure what it is.
Mhm.
But as a team, I think we'd have to discuss what does this look like to make sure that we can sustain this as we move forward.
Mhm.
So I just want to put that out there.
And I would propose that if we have to extend it, that we would look at our administrative fees to encompass the time that the other two
Mhm.
departments
Mhm.
are utilizing for these services on an ongoing basis.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to identify the two options. One is that you do it and we'll help you figure out how to do it. And then the other is, if we continue to do it, given these realities, here's costs based upon real costs of assessment of involvement and time.
Mhm.
And the other challenging issue is having it up to standard to be
Mhm.
able to manage it.
Mhm.
So, but that honest, you got two options. It's gonna be this, we're not pricing it out to discourage you, we're
Mhm.
pricing it out to be stewards of taxpayer dollars.
Mhm.
Those are the two options. And if they say, we just want you to manage it, we don't wanna collect monies, we don't whatever, we just like it for 30 years you plowed and we want you to continue doing that, here's what it'll cost moving forward.
Mhm.
If I may, Madam Chair, the other thing that we haven't talked about today, and this is really part of the crux of it from Mr. Nessheim, is that we have fewer and fewer contractors willing to bid on these. And we have no teeth to really enforce it because Mr. Nessheim is trying, especially on the summer maintenance contracts, to work with our contractors to do what they've quoted. They don't have enough staff or time to get it done. He can't alienate them
Mhm.
because we
They're
will
the ones
have no one
doing
left
it.
to bid.
Mhm. Mhm.
10 years ago, we had 2-3 bids on most of our SGSDs. We beg and plead sometimes to get one on every SGSD. And then.
It's not sometimes, it's every year. We're
It's every
reminding
year.
people to put in a bid.
We are.
You know?
We email, we call, because we're not getting the bids. And then when we do, they are already stretched so thin, especially on the summer maintenance, where we're
Mhm.
looking at graveling and grading and repeat services,
Mhm.
that Matt is left holding a bag that can't be filled, for lack of a better phrase.
They're not getting the services.
They're not
Mhm.
getting the services.
The
and if-
contractors aren't
And
going
if,
through.
and if he
Right.
forces the issue, we're going to lose
Mhm.
really one of our two main contractors that bids on almost every one.
Mhm.
Right. What
And-
was the?
And even increasing our services to cover the time isn't going to address those underlying issues.
That's a good point.
Those are all
You-
good things.
She had, Lisa put together, I think it was the last 10 years.
I grabbed 3 of them on summer maintenance.
And I-
From 2014 to 2024, every one of these SGSDs was supposed to have 2 gradings. One had 2 gradings, 5 of 11 years, 45% of the time. Another one had it 4 of 11 years, 36.36% of the time. And one had it 55.55%.
So you have this model now where even if you get a bidder, 50-50 whether they come out. And then we are fielding, again, the neighborhood politics of why aren't they out? We try and call, we have no teeth. You try and play nice because you don't want to alienate now the only people that are supposed to be bidding to do the work. And so again, you want to talk broken model, there's no repercussions, right? We have repercussions where if you do a construction project for us, right? Oh, we'll fine you, we'll, disbar, there's not disbar, but like a myriad, you understand, a myriad of things you can do there versus with this, there's nothing. You're just sitting there calling people, trying to get them to come. And so just percentages, again, we talk data, you're going 30%, 50% of the time these actually work. And so, again, we're left sitting here going, we're in this broken system that clearly works for so many other entities, HOAs, POAs. Why are we involved? Why is the county involved in just these few? So, anyways, okay.
And when it comes to the letter, I guess we're going to talk more about that or vote on it and read it and all that, but I think it should come from Administrator Treble on behalf of the county board, and Highway Department, Auditor, MIS, Legal, I don't know how many others, but everywhere it's touched, I think,
Right.
should be, I guess maybe Emergency Management as well, I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, we don't want to just also throw everything, yeah.
Yeah, I think we can put it under my name as
Mhm.
county administrator, and then we can touch on some of the other
Yeah.
areas as well. I agree with that approach.
Yeah, yeah. I think you need to take the hits, so.
No, she doesn't have.
I'll share it with you.
You
How's
share it?
that?
All right, thanks.
Okay, is everybody comfortable with our
Yeah.
plan?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
okay, more to come.
Anything else?
Not off the top of my head. I think this has laid out a good process. I think even looking at the timeline we have, even if things progressed accordingly, I think, you know, assuming it keeps going the way we are proposing it to go, I think it would still be something that would not affect next season. Even if we talk January, even February about, you know, meetings and stuff. So I think there's room. It obviously starts to get tighter the further we go. but-
Lisa?
And one of the stipulations in the state policy and our state rules and our local policy is that any contract in effect at the time of a potential dissolution remains in effect until the end of the season. So winter is covered automatically. It would, the only way the time frame would be impactful would be if we were looking at this in March or April, and so then we would have to let summer contracts.
Right.
So that's something to think about. And then potentially what we would have to really think about is what we're going to do about assessments, because we usually get that information to the auditor's office by mid-January.
Oh.
And so then would we proceed as though they were going to have a year of services, do the collections in May and November, and then give credits back at the end of the year? I mean, those are things that are impactful for the auditor's office in particular.
Mm.
So those are some things that we will probably have to have some discussions about in the coming weeks with Auditor Powers.
Last question. Who gets the letter? Is it just the reps? Is it we mail individual addresses?
Individuals, I would say.
I think individuals and an
Everybody that has a
electronic
vested
copy
interest.
to your rep.
Yeah? Okay.
Just SGSD?
So 260 properties. I'm just letting you, 270, I'm just letting
I
us
just
know.
have to look at your postage budget and see what it says.
Administrator
Yeah.
Rebel?
So I'm going to add something that may not be popular here, but that's one perspective. The other
Mhm.
perspective are those that might support not providing county funding for the SGSDs. So how do we make sure that we're collectively
Everybody.
getting voices from not just the people
That's true.
impacted
Mhm.
by the SGSDs, but also from the community as a whole?
So our local media, you know, looking at a piece of information that would be in the Cook County News Herald that would go out to everyone, maybe the North Shore Journal, because that goes to everyone, but thinking of some ways to reach out to our community broadly.
I guess that's a part of why I think this timeline is going to be longer is because I think we should start by focusing on the reps of the SGSDs because it's a smaller group, it's manageable. They're supposed to be disseminating information as well. And then we also have to, after, or it could be at the same time, but I'm just looking for management, expand it to all property owners that have SGSDs, as well as the whole public. So this is going to be, I think, a heavy process, but I think it's really important to cover all that in a systematic approach, just to talk through things, work through things, because there's going to for sure be a lot of pushback. It's just how do we navigate that? How do we manage that? How do we communicate that?
Administrator Rebel?
So with that, I wonder if the letter goes to the reps from the districts, and then we put in the letter, please provide this to the other members of your SGSD.
I think
That
to
way it's
start.
putting the responsibility on them.
That's,
That
I
could be
think,
an approach.
I think I think that's the best way to start, but I do think everyone does need to be included, and so after we kind of work through some things with the reps, then we'll have better perspective, and then we can share more information. I don't know. It just seems like a layered and stepped approach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The question, I know in my first term, we were dealing with the same thing, just trying to get people that would do it and looking at the bids at what they were coming in. Have you ever looked at any entrepreneur, anybody that looking at the business that's there, and if they were to, have the equipment and understand it, and look, there's plenty of work for you to do here, so that we would have somebody that intentionally would commit to this.
I think what we've heard from contractors and why they kind of like the program, and this is one side, and it's gonna, well, anyways, you hear from them, you say it's a good program because it provides work for contractors, right? And if there's enough work, heck, we can hire. You start talking about this wonderful scenario of economic development. And instead now what we see in the last year or so is the opposite, where now these contracts aren't getting fulfilled. And, so you bid, and that's great, but you didn't come out to do the work. So where's this economic component? Or are you just so busy, which is great, but like the infinite amount of work up here, where honestly, these can get a little fussy. And so do you want to do that, or do you want to, do some things that might be easier?
And there has been a lot of retirements.
Also true.
And I think.
And so that's why there's so much work, and there aren't a lot of new people coming up, because what does a grader cost? Dump trucks, liability insurance, you're gonna need to have a special trailer, which is taxed and licensed, and so it's not, I've got an extra few thousand and let's go.
Right.
No, it's a huge investment.
And to Commissioner Gamble's point, like, there have been younger, right, contractors entering, and they're already swamped, So it's like, how many more younger contractors do we need to target to, I think that's what you're getting at.
Well, just
Not necessarily
somebody
younger,
looking
but
at the opportunity. I mean, if you do a feasibility study, you say, hey, here's an opportunity. If you're interested, somebody say, hey, I'm willing to invest in the infrastructure in order to be able to do that and contract, and I'll deliver on it. And but you'd have to know, if I'm going to do this, what's my return on investment?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, like, same with seal coating. There's quite an opportunity for someone to be a seal coater. Same with painting stripes. Same with
Name the thing.
IT repair. Same with, everything. There's opportunity. So I don't know if we want to. I hear what you're saying, but I don't know how.
Right.
Well, I just was
Where we can
curious
go.
whether, because of all the frustration, to kind of, if there's putting it out there in the context, here's an opportunity.
I know we've had, maybe not official conversation, but, anytime we talk or meet with contractors, a lot of them, are, friends or family of our staff, or, anybody. I'm just using that as an example, where everyone knows about it, but they have so much other work already.
Yeah.
They don't need more. And so now, again, to Commissioner White's point too about the startup costs on this, I mean, we talk about buying new trucks, but I mean, you even look at what we sell them for on state bid, and 15 years old, you're still shelling out $30,000, I mean, on an old dump truck, and that's just the dump truck. You're not talking about a grader to do some of this, So I think there's so much work up here that it's impossible. There's not enough. It's not, I mean, it feels like infinity work, but clearly a lot of these other, HOAs and POAs have been doing it just fine for a long, long time without us being a part of it. And I'll bring that back full circle. Where, they're not having these issues, so.
Is that true? Are they not?
I haven't heard.
Because that'd
And
be
when I've
a good
talked
data
to a
point
few
too.
as well, well, again, it gets to the point of they have far more autonomy
Yeah.
as an HOA
Yeah.
to interact with their contractors. It's more freedom to decide what you want to do, the choice of what you want to do, the control over how it gets done. They're the ones that can badger somebody every single day if you want to have at it. We aren't.
Change ups and just
Exact-
flexibility.
It could be,
yeah,
yes,
you know.
absolutely, and that's what that does. You take us out of the equation. This is yours to do with as you please. You don't have to deal with us anymore. Yeah,
Okay, everybody know the plan.
write a letter.
Just one last thing, reading through this, it was referenced at our October 29th regular board meeting. I do not think we passed anything there in regards to SGSDs, so I read that somewhere in the handout, and I don't.
It could have been, so when we put this together, what the intent was just to show, here's an example of what
Yeah.
dates could
But-
look like.
I think it scared some people.
That's fine. But that's why, so the timeline was, here's what that actually looks like. So as
Yeah.
we start pushing things out, now you get an idea of, okay, now it's not March, now it's gonna be, May.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So it was a draft timeline.
Oh, God,
It's
yeah.
not-
That's what,
it's
yeah,
not final.
proposal,
Yep.
proposal, that's what all of this is. Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes.
Lisa?
The one thing I would request is that Auditor Powers and our administrator give us some direction on what we're going to do for assessments for 2026 for these entities as this process is ongoing.
Mhm.
That's an important component for us.
I think we have to steady as she goes until we change
I
course,
think
you
so,
know,
but
but.
I
you
need to
know.
be told that officially.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
More to come.
Very much,
Thank you.
appreciate it.
So we're gonna take a break
Take a
now?
break, yes, we're gonna take a 15-minute break to reconstitute ourselves.
Computer charger.
I should have brought that bag of little mini.
Thank you. Welcome back. The second phase of our Committee of the Whole is to have a budget discussion. Brady has given us lots of information, new, and maybe there's something new, something for all of us to digest and go over again and look at and record and make decisions other than not today. No decision made today, but just to review everything. Brady, do you have any input you'd like to start us with?
Well, we were looking at just what are the functions of government, just kind of a generality. Local administration, so counties are the local administrative unit for the state, responsible for implementing, enforcing state laws within their jurisdictions, law enforcement, public safety, and other various local services. Got health and human services. We play a crucial role in delivering health and human services to residents. May involve administering programs such as public health services, social services, and other assistance programs. And social services, under our same department, that includes support for families, children, individuals in need, child protection, adoption, foster care, etc. Property assessment and taxation. Counties are typically responsible for assessing for tax purposes and collecting taxes, and then helping with property tax assistance or relief. Public safety, county sheriff's office responsible for enforcement in unincorporated areas and additional services such as emergency management, land use and zoning, regulations to regulate, guide development of land within the boundaries, issuing permits, planning for infrastructure, ensuring compliance, elections. Counties play a large role in conducting elections, maintaining voter registration records, overseeing the process, includes managing polling places, counting votes, infrastructure maintenance, maintaining, improving local infrastructure, including roads, bridges, other public facilities, judicial functions. County governments are connected to the judicial system, maintaining courts, supporting the justice system, overseeing local law enforcement. So that's some of what we all do as really an arm branch of the state. And then I guess just to summarize, we had a proposed budget and levy. We had 7.57% is what we proposed. That's what's going to be seen in the property tax statements coming out for TNT. But since that time, we've made some adjustments, just call them adjustments. There are no real decisions made, but reacting to changes, departmental changes, and we got our final health insurance costs, and we got the paid family leave costs. We adjusted those. Changes in personnel that we just made changes to the budget for. And the net result of that is a $97,220 reduction in expense and a little bit of additional revenue since the proposed. So right now, with no changes by the board, we're sitting at 6.79% with what we'd already proposed to use for fund balance, with no change to any of that. So down from 7.57 to 6.79. There may be other adjustments before we get to December, but.
Okay, we'll open for conversation.
Can I add just, thank you, Madam Chair, can I add a couple things regarding changes that we're discussing as a result of all of the budget exercises that we've done? So things that won't immediately happen, but as a result of looking at a 5% cut for the different departments and just different conversations around the budget over the last few months, we are working with the city to relook at the law enforcement contract. The last time that was negotiated, my understanding, I believe it was in the 80s, and so we're looking at updating that contract and hope to have that before the board in the near future. We're also looking at some of the training software that we currently provide to staff to make sure that we're leveraging those dollars in the most effective and efficient way. And so that might be something changing in the future. We're also looking at every open position as departments have openings. They're bringing that to HR, and then ultimately I'm looking at what are we offering staff and making sure that it's comparable and that we need to fill all those positions. So we're doing that as well. We're also looking at non-client related travel within PHHS as well as other departments, making sure that the travel that we have is necessary. And then the other change I would mention is it was in the strategic plan to look at hiring a full-time PICS position, Public Information Coordinator, and we are going to keep that at a 0.5 as we move forward. So that's another item that has a positive impact on the budget that we won't be filling that 0.5. So we have that position is filled. It's a county position, but it's half funded by the hospital. Thank you, the hospital as well. So just to mention some of the things that we are doing, I just want to make sure that the board is aware that we're looking at all of the expenditures. Brady always does, and then as a new administrator, I'm trying to look at it with fresh eyes to also look at, you know, are there things that we can change to make sure that we're as cost effective as we possibly can be.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. One other thing that we touched on at the beginning of the year, but you should put on the list is evaluate all of the boards that commissioners sit on. That an evaluation of expectation. I think in the Public Health Human Services presentation this morning with the ARP grant funding, that accountability, I know that in my first term we had individuals that were not on staff or elected positions that wanted to know if they sat on board, would they be compensated for participation, whether it was, you know, Minnesota Travel Bureau, whatever. And so we drafted a policy, but that policy required that there had to be an accounting, you know, that made sure that the evaluation as to value was worth the expenditure of funds. So that's something that I think can be reviewed. And the other thing, any contracts or memorandums of understanding or agreements that we have, like we do have with the city and the sheriff's office, I don't know if we have one with the highway department and service as well, but we should identify all of these and make sure that we're keeping those current, just as a matter of best practice, you know.
Yes, and if I can speak to that, I have a list of different items that I'm working through with Administrator Roth, and we wanted to start with the law enforcement contract, but there are a number of services that we provide to the city, and so we anticipate just working through that list as we move into 2026.
Yeah.
And Commissioner Gamble, to your point about all of our committees and boards and all that, I will be working with Administrator Treble on that, which means I'll be talking to all of you.
Okay.
So,
And that's kind of an annual thing,
is.
as
Oh, yeah.
we get ready for our organizational meeting,
Yeah.
that we review all of those assignments to determine what's good, what's changed, what can we eliminate, what maybe do we need to add, but it's an annual evaluation.
And with that, if I may, Madam Chair, we have started a list of questions that we anticipate asking all of the commissioners to get to your point,
Yeah.
or to reflect your question about, does it align with our values?
Yeah.
Is it high priority and things
Yeah.
like that, to try to see, are there areas where perhaps we don't need to have a commissioner assigned to that particular committee?
Yeah. And there can be overlap with certain committees that we sit on, and so, anyway.
okay. Any other inputs or questions?
I just want to go back to the cash availability review that Brady provided us at our last meeting, and make sure that we are utilizing 30% of our forest development funds, which would be $24,483. Our state PILT money, we can annually use $35,000, and our environmental trust fund, which is just the interest, and I'm not sure how much interest there is on that account.
Yeah, it's about whatever I put on there, 379, I think. was
So
the
that
number.
is, okay,
That's the interest.
That's the
Yeah.
interest. That's what I needed. But I would recommend that we use those funds in a targeted fashion for Firewise and Soil and Water. That's what they're designed to be for.
The other thing, I think it's important foundationally just to this discussion, because it's a moving target as things change, and that is that for every $129,000 reduction in budget contributes to 1% reduction in levy.
Mhm.
So just understanding that's where that at. I think we were looking at it before was 130-some thousand, but with some of the changes, it's brought that down to 129. The other thing is that affects, what bottom line tax is the tax rate. And for every 329,000 reduction, it reduces the tax rate by 1%. So when you look at, which is equal to 2.5% levy reduction. So those two figures affect what tax assessment is.
Any other thoughts? Commissioner Trouble?
If I can respond to Commissioner Sullivan, Brady and Brooke and I were planning on having a meeting to talk about some of the funding, including the cash availability, and to ensure that we're leveraging the funding as best as possible. So we have not had that meeting yet, but I think to your point, we can discuss using it for Firewise and Soil and Water, but Brady
Yeah.
is definitely the expert here, so I want to make sure that's accurate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
For sure.
Madam Chair, the other thing on that point is that, in having this discussion with Brady, if we look at the PILT funds that are designated for recreation, that we could consider two things that come to mind. One is that the community center has added an additional 70-some thousand to their replacement on, which is recreational things. So we could take that 76,000 and use the funds to fund that, and it would not impact, that 76,000 would not impact levy. The other thing is that we talked about is that we could take the park position and we could use $35,000 to defray the cost of that position. So any monies that we have that are in existing funds within the context of what's allowable, we should first look at those things to try to mitigate some of the impact, and that's certainly something that would be helpful.
So just to make sure I understand what you're saying, Commissioner, so you're saying with the PILT funds, look at using that for the .5 park position, and then for the 76,000 out of the community center budget. And can we do that for this next fiscal year?
There's no reason we can't.
Okay.
And so the point is that within the context of what those funds are allowable, in
Yep.
some funds, we just keep
Right.
putting money in and keep putting money in. And in previous budget discussions that it was part of, we'd always say, are there pockets of money
Yep.
around that we've designated for 8-track tapes, which we're not gonna be ordering any 8-track tapes,
Right.
but we could put in something that's similar so that
Yeah.
intent for those dollars gets applied. And I think that us understanding the context in which these dollars are available to us, let's use those dollars. So,
Agree.
yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure I
Sure,
understood.
yeah.
But yeah, I
It
absolutely
just
support that.
saying it would be
Yep.
something we could certainly do.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, you just keep in mind that they're not available afterwards. The tax forfeit is
Right,
They're gone.
short-term.
right.
Now, the environmental trust fund, that continues to make interest revenue. So there's a 500 and some $1,000 principal that'll be there until end of time or law changes, but.
Yeah.
So,
And
so with that then, I mean, the community center, that makes sense, but with the park position, what you're saying is once those funds, we leverage all of them, then that park position would have to go into the base, and that would be a levy position.
Yeah, and it is right now.
Yep, so just so the commissioners understand that, then we would be asking to put that back into the base in the future.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, just generically, that any funds that are one-time funds, if you use it as an application to, reduce levy impact, do it, but do it with the understanding that this is something that won't be ongoing.
Right.
And we have many things in our budget that are one-time funding that initiated things that are now totally levy dependent, which becomes a burden on top of the things that are mandated. So we have to be careful in using those dollars with that awareness.
And that's exactly why I asked that question earlier today about the grant funding for that program. I support it, and from what I heard from Grace was that funding would be ending, and so I wanted to make sure that she clearly stated that then
Exactly.
goes into, and you're right, as we take on more and more of that work, then it does impact our ability to do
And the
mandated
problem with that,
services.
without an honest discussion and upfront disclosure, is that we get comfortable and our decisions get influenced, not from the fiscal standpoint, but from the comfortable standpoint, if that makes any sense. So,
Yeah, I guess I'd push back and not say comfort as much as expectations.
Yeah.
well, it could be I would agree with that, but,
Because comfortable makes it sound lazy, but
I
what we have
agree.
is values, we have community values that we're supporting.
which has to be weighed, which is what
Versus the fiscal,
conversation
yeah.
with the whole highway thing is. that
Mhm.
We really need to have a broader discussion, which is this evaluation thing of what is it that we are asked to do in service and how many things are under that umbrella. That's why the strategic component of it is a means of discipline measuring that.
The other thing, and I don't mean to make a big stink, it's just, that's a narrative that I often hear, is we start things that have one-time funding, and then we continue with levy, and I just am not aware of those costs. Like, I hear about them, but I never hear the specifics. This program started that way, this position started that way, it's just always that there are many of them. So I think when we go through those, it'd be really helpful if we can identify that and give perspective on what those are and if they still bring the values that we're aiming for. But I haven't seen that yet. It's just a narrative that I hear often, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could.
And with that, I had a
definitely.
conversation with PHHS, because what I've heard is that it's a lot of the public health work and staff
COVID.
within that department that as a result of
Oh.
COVID, and what I learned when I sat down with Grace is, I think almost every one of those positions, it's a variety of different funding, so it's not like a clear 100% of this position is funded through this grant, but the majority of that work is funded. So even if we had one-time funding, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, Brady, but even if we had one-time funding, I think we've been able to continue through extensions or through additional grants, but a lot of that work is currently funded.
Yeah, still a liability, but it's a narrative that
Right.
has gone, is an old narrative
Okay.
that happened before COVID even, just an assumption.
It's another lens to look at, though, because we've
sure.
had many situations where there's funding, and we've come in with this outside funding, and we propose something, and if we don't clarify that when the funding goes, this something goes, and many counties, they'll tell you that, in your conversations, that you need to, that's respectful, you just need to identify up front that when that funding goes. But if you can be resourceful and find additional funding to continue it, that's good. But, and seeing that resourceful is the big thing when it comes to non-mandated. I personally, and I think the community wants to see the resourceful nature of people earning this, because there's many people that have just sort of grown comfortable with the funding that's there, and they haven't necessarily been aggressive in generating dollars independently. That comes from interviews in the past with organizations that come in asking for monies. So,
Yeah, and so what I'm hearing you say is organizations that have requested funding, so PHHS, for an example, they have a grant process for organizations, a screening process. They have specific criteria, they screen the applications, and then they make decisions on the funding. What I'm hearing you say is we don't have that with the other discretionary funds that we've provided. And I know that we're talking, or in the past, there has been discussion about a discretionary policy that wasn't proposed or wasn't approved. And so what I think I'm hearing you say is that moving towards a process where you have an application, a screening process, and make intentional decisions would be helpful. Is that accurate?
But that's a generic statement,
Okay.
but I mean, I would question, and Brady provided that information on the history of non-mandated and how we've done it, because we've done it this way, and it gets shifted around and things. It comes to the issue of the broader identifying, like our discussion with the highway department, what are we mandated to do? Number one, what are the resources we have? And if we've perceived value that make Cook County unique in how we address things, evaluate it, but do it in that context. But we first need to look at not necessarily what is the new and the different and the exciting. We have to look at things in the context of what are we tasked with doing, and evaluate that honestly. But this is where the evidence-based budget process addresses that.
And so if I may respond to that, so one of the things that I have found interesting since I've started is I've looked at, for a county that has the staff, the number of staffs that we have. So we have approximately 140 staff, I believe. So looking at the best practices in the HR realm, we're understaffed. Looking at the best practices for our facility management and custodial services, we're understaffed. So when we look at our mandated service areas, our core functions, we're understaffed in a lot of areas. And I haven't done an overall assessment of every department, but just looking at a few of them, we're actually understaffed. And I've heard concerns about adding staff or filling positions. And so I think it's important to just say that out loud as well.
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, when you do look at the core services and you look at best practices and data, we're actually understaffed.
Yeah, I would do a comparable. Commissioner Martinson and myself in our first term did a comparable with counties and in every department, and so that we had a context to understand that. So I would just say that statements as to Commissioner Beal's comment about, I hear this, you know, that da 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 da, that we want to see the concrete that supports that statement. So, yeah.
We talked a little bit about that when we added HR staff. We looked at what expectations are, and same with like caseloads for PHHS, what
Yeah.
is, and so there's another understaffing and square footage of building. I mean,
Yeah.
that's how you
Yeah,
got the
exactly.
facility. So we
Yeah.
looked at that a little bit, but enough to convince me.
Yeah.
Well, I think Brady's finding that in his office.
Hmm.
You know, there's more and more things that are happening that you need help with. So we
Yeah.
didn't face that, 12, 14 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, things have changed.
Yeah.
And we haven't changed that
Mhm.
staffing in, I don't know, 30 years. But mostly you keep up with technology. But
Right.
but even technology takes time.
Yeah.
A lot of things, the front-facing, when you make that simpler and better, sometimes there's more work on the back end, and we're finding that. And on a lot of our benefits, for example, you wouldn't see that, how it hits your bank account.
Yeah.
Causes more work to a simple bank account for things like, managing the cash in it and doing bank reconciliations. Much more complicated than
Yeah.
20, 30 years ago, for example. That's a small thing. Just one
And now
example.
we're facing AI replacing people. But that'll be in the future. We don't want to replace your staff. Did you have a comment?
I just wanted to say, one of the things I would hope that we would do right away in 2026, starting in January, is get some policies related to non-mandated funding and discretionary funding. I mentioned earlier, when we were off camera, I've started working on some policies, but one of the things that the non-mandated funding is really looking at services that are not legally required, but are considered very valuable or essential to our community, like the airport, for example. You know, how are we going to get firefighters in here? How are we going to run a seaplane base if we don't have an airport? You know, how are we going to do medevac? We can do a helicopter if it's not foggy, but if we need a plane out at the airport, we got to have the airport. So we need to really have different policies for non-mandated funding and discretionary funding, which is PHHS. And I would hope that we could have a conversation so that non-mandated funding maybe comes as a recommendation out of Budget Facilities Advisory Committee, and that discretionary funding is a recommendation that comes from PHHS, but that final budgetary decisions rest with us, that we have recommendations from those groups.
I have a question under commissioners. What's the suspense?
Oh, it's in statute. Just that the commissioners have a suspense account. And
What's it used for?
it doesn't
We have
say.
enough suspense without
It doesn't
having
say.
an account.
I think we could do away with that.
You gotta wait for it.
Well, that's it. I mean, because it's
It-
24, it's
Yes.
not there. So let's just say that it's under statute and we better
You're
put
not
something in
required
it.
to have it, I don't think.
But that's an area, unless it's understood as to why, and when we're looking to try to be good stewards of dollars.
Right.
If there's any justification, then I'd say we could not, this year, not do it.
You could. It's been left there because often, at least in the past, maybe not in recent years, but, well, where are we going to find, do we have any place where we can spend that? Do we have any money not earmarked for,
Cookies.
everything?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And, well, we have a suspense account, and we used to spend it regularly.
It's like a slush account or the kitchen drawer that has everything.
We don't
in
know
it.
how to define what's going to come up.
How about professional
Yes.
contract services? How have we spent that money in the commissioner?
I'm going to take some of these as questions, because I don't think you want to wait for me to do a.
Yeah, okay.
Because I would do a
So
20,
what I have
30
is,
year on how that's been spent, I think, to get
In
a big
2024,
sense of
we
it.
spent 6,491 actual.
Yeah, I
And
mean, I can
so
go find
in-
those things.
And
for you.
in 6,000, or 2025, we approved 6,000, and we're proposing, 6,000 for 2026. I'd like to understand how was that spent, and where are we at year-to-date in that account?
I'm going to take that down as a question and not try to.
I think it was,
Study right now.
generally, I think it was for board development, but I don't know that all of it was. But that was a part of the strategic plan, and I think it was maybe whittled down, and then overspending it caused it to grow again. But that's my
Yeah,
rough memory.
yeah, it's just one of the questions that,
Mhm.
The other was court administration, 2024 actual was 11,823. The 2025 projected was 15,000. My curiosity is what's
The-
year-to-date. It would be interesting to have
Right.
that.
That one's easier because those are court mandated services. I forget the terminology anymore, but there's certain services that are court mandated. They could go in the attorney's office, for example. We used to have a court department, so we kept using it for those court mandated services. It's attorney's cost for certain services. I can get you a list on that too, but, you could move it, it might be simpler if it was right in Jean's department,
Yeah.
but it's not her choice. It's a court mandate
Yeah.
when it happens. I don't know if you remember what those
Those are
are.
child protection cases.
Child protection
Cases
is
for
some
the
of it.
parents to have
Yeah.
attorneys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gene, under the law library, you had referenced that there could be a savings of 44%, which I think that translated about $4,200. And that the state was sort of directing, saying that some of these resources and accessibility could be done online. And so, you know, I appreciated the input that came from departments, further understanding that, so we can make decisions as to whether your comfort level, you know, in regard to those things. I think that would be, you know.
There is an online platform right now, that's the LexisNexis platform. It's very expensive. It's less expensive than Westlaw, but it's significantly more expensive than Fastcase. I'm not familiar with the Fastcase platform, but that is a recommendation straight from the law librarian herself, so fairly trustworthy. It would just be a matter of convening the law library board in order to learn more about it if we
Yeah.
make that change before the new year.
Yeah. It's something coming to our attention that I'd like to pursue, you know, subject to, you know, the comfort level of those that are under that responsibility, but.
The law library is like significantly underutilized at this point too, so there were also recommendations in that report about how to have more publicity or more attention drawn to the library so that it can be a better service to the community.
It was updated about three years ago. You know, chairs and availability of both computer and
Yeah.
law books, so that part's done.
How to create an HOA.
Yep.
So Brady, you, in yours, under auditor treasurer, you had talked about some things that you could do. Cutting the outsourcing of TNT. And, I mean, when you put that in there, and then looking at soil and water, if we were to charge them for, you know, some accounting service that we provide, if soil and water's grant money is significant, and it'd be one of those situations where you have a fund that you can apply those dollars to something that makes sense, that if we were to look at establishing a charge, they, as I understand it, they have the space rent-free that we provide. And if we were to charge an accounting fee that would come from monies that they've got that's not putting a burden on them, that would be something I think would be worth exploring.
It would. I don't know, from just very short discussions with Elena, they have very little ability for any administrative type costs. That's what they come to us for. So just in a, brief, without researching, her reaction is, we got to ask you for a higher levy to cover it, because we use all of the if there is administrative in any budgets, we use all that. And they come to us for what's outside of that. And
So if it simply means it's Peter, Robbie, Paul, whatever else, then it doesn't make sense. But but exploring it based upon, you're bringing it to our attention, if it makes sense without becoming a burden to them, then that would be an area where we could trade dollars.
And we could ask them to look a little harder on that to see, would that make sense?
And I did have that conversation
Yeah.
with her because I was curious about it after I saw it in your
Mhm.
reduction exercise, and it would be a hardship. They have had funding cut over the last few years. They anticipate additional funding cut. And to Brady's point, when they apply for a grant, a lot of the administrative fees cannot be included in that. They're not covered, and so
Okay.
they wouldn't be able to complete the work that they do in Cook County. It would be a significant challenge for them.
We have the same problem in Firewise.
Right.
There's nothing in the state grants for administrative.
Yep.
How do you feel about the new staff, 5 hours a week?
Oh, I don't want to do that.
Huh?
But I'm telling you what I do. If you said you're cutting 5%, you know, I'd have to look at everything, including maybe cutting that staff as opposed to cutting the current staff a certain amount in order to reach the 5%. That's really the only way to do it. All travel, basically, for a year. A lot of that's really valuable. But if I had to, that's where I would go for a year.
And I
And I
would
would-
not support that
Yeah.
Yeah.
at all.
And I would,
Not-
and I would,
Say not cut- I mean, the travel would just,
and no one wants to go back in my office to, it's not like that difficult, but like printing the tax statements and T&T statements, doing them in-house. Our equipment really isn't designed for that. You end up, you know, making problems with your printers and with your folding machines and stuff. They're not made for that kind of volume. So it just, you know, what is that, efficiencies of scale, they just do it easier outside of it. But I tell my staff, do you want to take more time off free, or you want to do this? And they would do it in order to keep working. So it would be the lesser of two evils is, yeah, we'll bring it back in-house, you can keep working and making your salary. And that would be true of other things.
the other thing about the new position, with the new position, not knowing how all that works out in the shared position with the auditors, or with the Recorder's
Yeah.
Department, that making a decision to cut that time back, not knowing, because we haven't had that lived experience.
Right.
Could be challenging. But again, just having the discussion based upon things that you brought to our attention.
For sure, I would want to keep it to reduce the overtime.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of overtime, especially with the audit work we've been doing in the last 4 years. We're doing a lot more of this audit work than we did when we had the state auditors, for example. They never had time to sit with us and explain, well, why did you make that change? Why did you make that change? What did you do here? What did you do there? And that was part of the discussion with Redpath, and they said, yes, we'll work, if you want to know that and do more, we'll work with you on that. And we did, and we're doing a lot more of that. And our audit costs with the state auditors were in the mid-90s when we ended with them, 96,000 or so. And right now, after, this would be the 4th year with Redpath, we're up to 60,000. You know, if we added the cost of living onto the state auditors, assuming nothing changed, I mean, we're saving 50,000 a year in our office on that. And that's probably shorting it. And if we can trade that for getting some overtime down, it's not only going to, it won't be a complete wash, I don't think, on the staffing, but it's going to.
Dollars, you mean?
In dollars.
Yeah.
But then on
Yeah, I mean, I've got
Work.
somebody who's burning out
Right.
on not taking, they're always maxed on their time off because they can't take it.
No.
And it's like, you know, I keep saying, well, it's going to get better. We're going to get more efficient.
That's what I
You're
keep
getting more
saying.
efficient, it's going to, and at a certain point, it's, you just kind of run up against the wall, that's all.
And with the other side of that position with the recorder's office, we're already paying for a temporary employee for those hours. So, I mean, it's kind of a wash in that way too.
Yeah, they they've always needed at least a part-time person there, because if 2 of them are off or sick, somebody's got to come and cover it. And if they're, you know, a busy summertime, sometimes 1 isn't enough. You got to have somebody to come in part of that time at least. And if 2 of them, they need to go to a training or something, they don't want to shut the office down.
So would it be fair to say that when tasked with looking at where you'd cut 5%, that you did that dutifully, but really having, you know, an honest conversation with you, you'd hate to do that for how it impact things?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
it would be, you don't know where it would affect the service. You just have less time. You wouldn't answer phone calls, you wouldn't get back to people as quickly as you do. Sometimes that's not that bad, but I think in the long run, it would affect others outside of us, other departments.
And we could have additional staff turnover as a result of it as well, because we have staff, like Brady said, in that department that aren't able to take their vacation time, and that's not an environment we want to encourage for our staff.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
No.
Is your list?
Yeah, I got a list, but, so I would just go through, on the assessor, the department proposes moving the monies dedicated to the boundary water appraisal, which is $28,350. And have been part of that discussion with the counties that are affected by that this year. And part of the problem is that the DNR sets the parameters in which that appraisal would take place, which means they've sort of corralled you in, into the conclusion that they've come up with that assessment. So there's discussion as to whether it'd be worth making that investment, given the fact that you can't do an appraisal by normal practices. You got to do it the way they do it, which sort of leads you to the end that they are at.
In the Forest
I
Service.
think that our efforts are better invested in trying to get legislation that protects us, and then moving into the evaluation moving forward to work in it. So I think that given the discussions we had and the things, I think that that's an area that we could, I would agree with that recommendation, that we take a different approach given the limitations that we have with the DNR setting how we could do it.
I mean, the
Feds.
Forest Service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, this is federal
This is
help,
federal.
so
Yeah.
it's U.S. Forest Service.
I don't, yeah, I'm not
Is that a
sure.
recommendation, that we don't do that?
Yeah. Yeah, that we don't, so here's,
That's the first I've heard of this.
the department
not a
proposes moving the monies dedicated to the 2028 BWCA appraisal under contract services to 2027, or encourage state representatives that they work on the
This-
legislative
yeah.
fix that intends to set a floor for type Blacknick payments. Given the DNR is dictating the methodology used for any appraisal, the outcome in any appraisal may be predetermined. Recommend removing the 2026 budget levy reduction of $28,350. Yeah, anyway.
So to be clear, these 5% reduction exercises are not recommendations from staff. These are not what we want to do. These are in response to the request for us to
Right.
come up with a 5% cut. And then, like I said, I went through each and every one of them and identified areas where we
Yeah.
might be able to make some changes, but that weren't a risk to us as a county. This, to me, is a risk to the county if we were to cut
Absolutely.
this. I think that with some of the smaller departments, there's just nowhere to cut. So it's more challenging.
I
and-
agree with that, but it's not minimizing the importance of the BWCA appraisal. It's just whether or not this investment at this point in time, I mean, when we had that discussion, we debated whether or not it was worth the investment, and so we're deliberating whether we want to invest it, given the limitations set by the individual that's making the entity, government entity that's making the decision. And so that's why I think it is something that should be evaluated. And when you're looking at your tactical approach, you can say, are we better off going to a legislative approach than we are an appraisal that is rigged?
I just wanted to make sure that it was clear that these are not staff recommendations.
That's what I was confused.
Correct.
You said it was a
Right.
recommendation. I was like, that was the first I've heard of it. Last I heard is we want to save for this because last time we had no leverage. Last time they're like, this is our appraisal.
Well, true,
And that's
but-
what it is. And now we're
and-
like, we want an independent one so we can compare and have something to stand on.
That's true, but
Yeah.
when that decision was made relative to the discussion with all of the representatives in the counties affected at the most recent meeting this year, we're vacillating on whether it's even worth doing it, given the fact that it's rigged.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're saying, it might be and when I say the department, it's the department that is saying this. If we ask the question, how would you do it? The department is making the recommendation, they're the one that's saying, this is where you might do it. In the discussion with Brady, what we're doing is fleshing out to the extent that they would support that, other than just an exercise that says, well, throw it out because it's not going to make any difference anyway.
Yeah, I'm speaking for Bob, I'd rather he was here, but my guess is he's saying, if it's an either or, he
Get
says
forced.
that
Right.
I would cut that before I cut staff.
Right.
Because those are his
No, I understand
two
that. I
choices. I
understand
mean,
that.
yeah.
I get the impression that you're leaning more on the exercise as recommendations than just options.
Well, let's put it this way. Why would we do the exercise if it didn't inform potential decisions?
Yeah, options,
Yeah.
but not recommendations. That's what,
Well, it doesn't have to be, what I'm saying is that, and understanding, the understanding of the word recommendation, if we ask a department, where would you cut? Their recommendation is this. Or you could say their suggestion, but it's coming from the department. It's not us saying, you should do this. The department is saying in response to that exercise, this is what I recommend. So,
Perfect.
so we're talking about.
Is it okay if Bob
yeah.
joins
His
us?
ears are burning. Welcome.
He's here. Yeah.
Thank you.
So we're just talking about, when we looked at whether we deferred or, the evaluation contribution, 28,000. When we had that meeting in Two Harbors where, we were vacillating on whether it would be effective or not, given the fact that it seemed like it was rigged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so St. Louis County was gonna have their attorneys look at it and see, let's say we did pay for and have our own appraisal, and it said a number, something significantly different than what the Forest Service was coming up with. What's the next step of action if they just say, well, it is what it is, legal recourse. So St. Louis County was looking into that, and I know, there's been some other efforts to try and write some new legislation
Right.
in Washington to kind of put a floor on that payment. So I haven't heard anything back from St. Louis County on their legal opinion or whether or not they feel that an appraisal would be valuable to us, but I can certainly reach out to Julie Marinucci and see where that landed.
Yeah. Don't you think of the discussion that we had in Silver Bay or wherever that was, Two Harbors, that there was a degree of uncertainty as to whether or not it would be worth the investment, given the fact that we felt that we were restricted in what would be normal practice when it comes to an evaluation. And so my point is that with that uncertainty and sort of the rigging of the way we go about this, is that we might be better off trying to encourage legislation and things that would have a louder voice than investing monies in something that we appeared in that discussion was rigged.
Yeah, so I know, that was exactly what St. Louis County's concern was, is it even worth investing in this when we don't really know what is our recourse if we still are in a disagreement with two appraisals.
Yeah.
I know, according to the Forest Service manuals and policies and procedures, there is a process, and part of that involves looking at two appraisals, which the last time around we didn't have one. We just kind of reviewed their appraisal and gave our input, provided some additional information. But I do think that the county-owned or a county commissioned appraisal would have more weight. I think it would be a better argument than what we came with in 2018. The question of whether or not, we kind of think that appraisal could be anywhere up to $250,000, $300,000. But, that's kind of just, that's our best guess, is what, it would involve if you're contracting an appraiser who's also going to be using some additional resources like the experts who are familiar with mineral valuations and things like that. It could get astronomically expensive, and you know, if we don't have a guarantee that, you know, our appraisal would hold up, is it worth investment?
And that's where, waiting for, I mean, we have a piece of the puzzle, which is St. Louis County, you know, advising, but I know that was a concern in our discussion as to whether or not it would be worth the investment if in fact we don't have acceptance. And the point is that if we follow normal practice relative to evaluation, and they would commit to allow us to do that under normal best practice, it would make sense. But it seems like it's skewed, and unfortunately, if it's, you know, manipulated in that way, that's what I'm just saying. But
Yeah.
it'd be good to hear back from St. Louis.
So St. Louis County asked for copies of some legal opinions that we had actually received on the 2009, or it was probably the 98 appraisal. We had reached out to a law firm out of Duluth, and there were some legal opinions about, you know, our objection at that time, and so that's what they were going to review. And I'm happy to, you know, provide those to you guys. I found those in a box down in the basement, so it was a very valuable find. But I think that, you know, it's a good read for in regards to the discussion you're having here.
Yeah. Well, I think your awareness and the discussions that have been part of this, and the advocacy on the part of St. Louis County, I mean, this has been ongoing, that your opinion and assessment on this is, you know, is valuable and informs us on this, but based upon the discussion we had most recent, I just felt that this maybe was something that we were uncertain, and so that's why I was proposing that maybe we do not put this in the 2026 budget.
I will also reach out to staffers for our senators and find out where that legislation is at. It's been several weeks before, or since I had contact with them. Yep.
The appraisals are every 10 years, so 2028.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're going into 2026. Can we keep the 27,000 as a placeholder for now until we hear from St. Louis County what they're?
We certainly could, up until you set the final levy, that could be pulled out. And, you know, at the same time, we could also just drop this as a one-time expense if we feel in 2027 that we need to do it. You know, it could be used out of some of the balance we have.
Well, and I think we'll call it strategy, which is multi-leveled, which one is the best, and that's where I think that the affected counties are trying to make that determination. And a piece of the puzzle that we don't have is the opinion coming back from St. Louis County Legal. If we could have that on a timely basis, that would help us to understand that.
I will reach out to Julie, and in the meantime, I'll share with you guys those letters from our previous legal opinions.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe Jean wants to weigh in on those.
And obviously, the importance of those dollars to us, that $28,000 to bring integrity into that is money well invested in combination with all the affected counties. So it's not like we're trying to make a short-term decision that affects a long-term huge, you know, benefit to us, but, yeah.
Okay, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, no
Thanks.
problem. I'll shoot those over. I do know that our previous county attorney said that, you know, they wanted to hold those legal opinions close. Just so you guys know, in the last go-around, we never did share those with the Forest Service. We kind of held those to our.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Thanks for being available.
Any other questions, comments about anything?
Well, one thing I have a question on, well, I mean, I got multiple questions here, but a significant one, and it speaks to the issue that you're talking about, these things that are funded, and, you know, where are they? Give me an example. One would be that in the EDA had fundings that came through the care provision that initiated, as I understand it, that the loan, not the loan, but the business development. That's $200,000. $200,000 in business development. In my first term, I sat on the revolving loan committee, and we were pretty active. since, that's one of the committees I'm at, we have not met. Here we are in November. We have not met once. And there's different things that influence that. But as I understand it, and you can maybe clarify this, but we've got a revolving loan that we try to make a competitive rate and help businesses by coming alongside. That revolving loan fund was established by the legislature. That was the pool of money that we get it paid back, and then the interest continues to make it available to help come along businesses. Now you've got care funds that came in and funded $200,000 for the EDA, and the EDA business development makes that money available free of charge, no payback. It's just giving money away. And so the point is that if we had that money that was established by care funds, COVID, and now it's entirely $200,000 levy dependent, and we're seeing that our loan thing, what would I as a business want? Free money or to borrow it? And that's a question I have. So.
Yeah,
So
it started before COVID, but it
Yeah.
wasn't so big.
Yeah.
And then COVID really was the lifeline. The COVID funding was the lifeline. And because of the impact that had on local businesses, the EDA made a conscious decision to continue that because it was so, it leveraged dollars. It was exponential, I guess. And we have, I think it's St. Kate's Business School doing an analysis of exactly what that is and the dollars gone versus the dollars created and all that. But in the larger conversation, the ADA is hoping to incorporate the revolving loan fund so that we have a myriad and use it as a package for business development, because you're absolutely right. Since the substantial increase in the business development grant fund, the revolving loan fund has gotten much less use, and I'm assuming that's why. I don't know that for sure. And so incorporating that all together is going to allow us to just better support our businesses and what's most appropriate, because some fall into the grants, some would fall into the revolving loans, some would fall into just traditional lending from a bank. So it's a time of transition, but.
That's one of those things on evaluating, where our limited funds get put, that this is $200,000 that is entirely levy dependent.
Mhm.
Another area would be the monies that we're funding the wage subsidy for childcare.
Mhm.
That those dollars came out of reducing the fund balance in public health human services, but
Mhm.
now it's on the agenda entirely levy dependent.
Mhm.
And if you look at the, if I have an evaluation of looking at discretionary, funding, whatever, coming off of this morning's meeting and presentation, public health, age-friendly community. When you look at all of those things like that, if I want to know who's meeting that need, Care Partners certainly is meeting that need. The Hub is certainly meeting that need. And so when I look at evaluating these words and the things that are presented are great, but the substance of that comes in where we support organizations that partner to make age-friendly community real. And so if you look at our population and you look at the allocation of dollars, how much are we targeting that is going to a major population within our community? And for me, I would take more dollars and invest it in the Hub, because they're creating the social inclusion, the social participation, the transportation, the meals. They're meeting that criteria that we've identified. We should get behind and support those things, because that's a large demographic. So this is where I think when it comes to fully funding levy dollars, where are we going to put it that has the greatest impact, and do we know the population that we're serving?
I think it's both ends. It's the senior citizens, it's the Hub, and it's the childcare, and it's the children. and the parents who have to pay so much for the childcare, and the childcare organizations have to have a budget too. So I think we have to think of both spectrums and those in the middle. A lot of folks that I visit with in the West End, they're just making their living, they're going to work, dropping their child off, and they have no more room for anything else. So, you
Yeah,
know.
just understand that it's like a position that's created with funded grant money, that now that grant money is gone and we want to retain the position. You need to know that when it comes to the loans with the EDA, that is 100% levy.
The grants.
Grants.
You said loans.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
different.
that's right, the grant, that line item. And then with regard to the subsidy for the childcare, that is now 100%. So we are looking at $254,000 that is levy dependent. We also have to look at the fact that now with our LEC and our transfer station, that is new monies that affect the levy that we've added on this year. So we're adding an awful lot on top of insurance at 11.8 and whatever else. And I'm just saying, we have to figure out where we're gonna prioritize. Because some of these things were dollars that were there, and that's great, but when they go away, we're asking our community, you better pay for this.
And that's why I sent the AOA, because you'd mentioned, you know, that you thought that they haven't asked for anything in specific, except last year they did, but this year they didn't. So 31,000 last year, you know,
Yeah.
so.
And that was for a building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And what do we don't pay to be a member of the AEOA,
Yeah,
right? We don't have a, like for the Arrowhead Regional
yeah. Corrections.
Corrections, we pay a fee
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah, that's gone down 19%
Yes,
in the last, since.
but,
whatever.
but we receive so much money from, or so many services from AEOA that I feel kind of like we should like do something to thank them for being here, you know?
Well, that's an assessment.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it'd be really great if we could look at property tax rebate programs and what options we could have with that, because there are people in our county who can afford a lot, and there are people in our community who can afford nothing. And I think we can come up with a creative way to meet the needs of our community and not have the burden so heavy on the underprivileged. And I don't know how exactly, but it's an avenue that I think is really worth exploring, because our needs are ever growing. Many of our population's income is never growing. And so there's a conflict there. And it's going to continue forever unless we get some way to make that balance out.
Many states are struggling with property taxes. The Tribune has had 2 big articles about it. Some states are actually saying no property taxes, it's income tax. You're really jumping from one kettle to the other. But, you know, there's very much discontent out in the greater
Yeah.
world. And it's coming to editorials in the paper and all that, so maybe, yeah.
Our
Something to think
bonding, for our new bonding this year, plus the bonding that we already have, amounts to 9.272% of levy. So, this is why we have to, if we looked at it visually and just saw, you know, the proportion of all of these things contributing to levy, if our stewardship response is to use fund balance to reduce costs, I think we've abdicated our responsibility in trying to manage costs, coupled with, you know, looking at fund balance and still keeping where we need to be to attract good rates and be solvent in the case of a calamity. But we have to make some hard decision. It's going to be based upon the evaluation. I think that's where the strategic element says, what is it we value? Do we know who we serve? Do we know what we have to do? And what are be nice if we had it? But we're dealing with it here, and it's an uncomfortable process in the highway department because people have grown accustomed to these things, but reality is reality. And Robbie's statement is a good one, you know, that we are a county of limited resources, and we shouldn't be spending taxpayer dollars on things we are not responsible for. So that doesn't mean that we can't, as you suggest, but it means that our stewardship responsibility is to see things in that context. And I appreciate departments that come in and challenge us to think in that regard.
I did contact AMC yesterday. I was trying to see if I could collect some data on what percentage of the budget is discretionary funding in most counties, and they don't have that data.
Yeah.
But what the person I contacted, what she told me is that she did believe 15.8% is high. And so, not that that's a bad thing, but I think it's important to know that the number of funds that we allocate external to our core functions is high in comparison.
Well, and it's NGOs are an issue, and you look at it and you just see we just have to look at it. It's not comfortable, but it is something we have to evaluate, and knowing what other counties do and stuff gives us context in that process. But as I've said, in my first term, I'd ask people, do you do this? They said no, and I said, why not? Is it not because you don't believe in these things or that they have value? He said no, it's just a matter of priority, and it's anyway. So
one of the things that has happened in my new role is I've had a number of people come to me and say a couple people come to me and say, I have a request in for funding, and what is your process, and why was it cut from what I had asked for? And I don't have the best way to answer that, and mostly just because I haven't been here. This is the first time going through the process. But even now, as we go through this process over the next month, your point about the 200,000, and I know, HUD, I think the number was 35,000, if I'm not mistaken, in the budget, and
This payment in lieu of taxes, the
HUD.
state?
No, the HUD Center.
Oh,
Or the
HUB.
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 The hub. Thank
Okay,
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Hub.
well,
I think that they were one of the organizations that I think had requested more funding.
Yeah.
And so what is going to be our process as we move forward to make sure, is it the number that's already in there? Are we gonna go through them one by one, or what process are we gonna use?
Yeah.
My thought as I look at this is that we owe it to the organizations that applied and had received approval through PHHS to follow through with that. But I think we need a policy that outlines guardrails when we can have discretionary funding and when we may not. And it needs to take a look at our overall budget. It needs to look at fund balance and what we know we have to have for fund balance, what is extra, and then prioritizing those things. I do think that when we have funding and people apply, that criteria is important. And a number of years ago, we established that criteria to align with the health assessment, the community health assessment, and got rid of annual costs to the county that went towards wonderful things, but that really weren't our job, that were not a function of government. I think of the art colony, I think of the North Shore Music Association. It was really hard to pull those back because historically we've done them. But we need to establish criteria, and we need to establish a bottom line of what we're going to have in our budget, and that we only provide discretionary funding when we are above that. But I personally feel very uncomfortable this year telling organizations who believe they were getting these funds, oh, we're not doing that.
Right.
That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and that's why I asked the question too, because I think, I mean, similar to the conversation we had earlier, if we're not going to fund at the certain level, making sure that organizations have notice that this isn't a given, it may not happen next year or the year after, depending on what the climate, the budget forecast and climate is as we move forward.
Precisely.
And did we not, though, when it was not set in stone. It said this is what is proposed to be given to these entities, but we have a levy discussions. So you might not get this full amount. I mean, we did state that for this year, and I'm not suggesting that we not give out anything, because, I mean, we said we were going to. But going forward, to think, and yes, the recipients met the criteria, but why is the county funding school districts, and how much more money does the taxpayer have to give to the YMCA? Like, I mean, we're well over, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it's not discounting the value of the facility or anything, but it's, there are other, I mean, yes, and I have a real soft spot these days now for the hub, but the services and the how that facility is becoming more and more central to our community folks for their health. It's like it shouldn't have to compete with nonprofits. It's because they are providing services that, where else would you get 20 people to sit in a room to get their toes worked on or their feet worked on? Like, just try to think of maybe the basement of the Catholic Church, that's pretty big. But you know, it has more value than, not more value, it provides a service and a space that we don't have anywhere else in this county at this moment. And it's only, they have, once upon a time, and I don't know if anyone has yet, Brady, found out the reason why they're no longer on the levy, why they're no longer a line item for the county.
Well, it used to be a public health function.
Right.
Like, it was a county function. And then,
Right.
and then that's why they're not, is because they're not a county function. But I don't know why.
They are a 501c3.
I
That
don't know
is
why
not
that
something
happened,
that
but-
counties fund.
But it
Right,
maybe
so
was
why
a
did that
situation like
happen?
this, where they're like, we gotta cut somewhere, and so then, I mean, I don't know, that's just.
Yeah, it just, some of those that fall under that PH doesn't seem, I don't see the connection there between that entity and public health and human services. I mean, it's a sort of a stretch on some of those.
Oh, it's direct. All the services, I'd say, that the hub
But
provides.
no, I'm just saying, so schools and the YMCA and everything else. So in other words, we can rationalize and sort of pull it in there, but if I'm saying, if
Well, I
I look
don't
at
think
care,
it's
if I
sorta
look
like-
at Care Partners,
Yeah,
I'd say, yeah, that's definitely
yeah,
public health.
yeah.
But I don't necessarily see the school as public health. We can make it public health, but and the YMCA, well, you say, well, yeah, but how much are we giving? So
But we
that's
don't
what I'm
give,
saying.
I think we should clear that up, is we're not giving the Y anything.
No, I know, but it's a
Taxpayers
request that's
are
there,
paying.
but we make a
For
decision,
building.
we say no. We made a
Just the
decision to
building.
say no, but
Not the
but
organization.
nevertheless, it's in there and we have given. So I'm just saying, since we changed it into public health and human services, and you look who we've given it to, in some cases, I find it a stretch, the connection between those organizations. And when we were doing this before, I felt it ended up being that whoever did the best presentation got an analysis of the organization's benefit and fiscal management. So I had a town hall meeting and asked people, if people want your money, what would you like to ask them? And then that created an application process that organizations have to do, similar to IRRB and Lloyd K. And so then, the first time we went through that, the board chair says to the board, what do you think? And the response from commissioner was, it forces me to have to look at the financial, which is what we should be doing. What's a viable organization that's resourceful, generates money, and contributes to its own way. We have organizations that come in and say, unless we get money, we're gonna have to close our doors. But they're dependent on us to keep their doors open. And we have to evaluate, well, what are you doing to keep your doors open? Let's just take Historical Society. How come Chickawauk, how come they're, you know, one time, we gave them money. But other than that, now somebody can say, well, they live in a rich district, they got big players, whatever. But we need to get out there and find ways to help organizations generate, so it's not on the backs of people to have to fund them. That's what I would say, so.
And then, Ann, we were at the Joint Powers, or whatever it's called these days, and the mayor stated.
The
brought this
leadership
up.
committee, yeah.
Yeah, brought this up about a request being submitted to the city for assistance, financial assistance. And she pointed out that they don't have a policy, and they're not often asked, but they better get a policy.
And they created one, and it was passed.
Yeah.
And it's about not providing funding for these groups. Yeah, we can share that policy with you. It's a very short 2-page. If we develop a policy, it's going to be much broader than that, because we have many different kinds of things with non-mandated and discretionary funding. But I think it's something to look at, and
Yikes.
I need to leave.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
got a 1 o'clock meeting too.
Yeah. Okay, anything else? Otherwise, we can direct to the department heads, we can direct to Brady.
Where do we go from here, I guess is my question.
I don't have a recommendation. This, again, being my first time through
Sure.
this process, Brady and I had talked about a timeline, but in terms of next steps, if there's any additional information, I don't really have a recommendation. I feel like I think we've tried to be creative and thought through everything we can give you in terms of information. But
And I feel like Brady is very, very responsive when we have questions or need amounts or some type of analysis. I've found department heads to be really helpful.
And we will get together, and all the things that we've talked about on using some of this available cash.
Okay.
We'll be coming back with
I
that.
would say too, you know, having been, as other commissioners have, and having been part of this process before, this process has been more information to make decisions on. I think there's more integrity in it. I think we have certainly a lot more that we can do to demonstrate our stewardship responsibility when it comes to spending taxpayer dollars. But I do applaud the effort that's been put forward. I would like to eliminate 2 things. One is that we don't have time, and we're not proactive in making sure that we build integrity in the process. In other words, I don't like to say, well, gee, we're backed up against it, we got to make a decision. Eliminate that. Be more intentional in a process that builds integrity into what we do in the budgeting. And the other is to come to the point where when we have these allocations for non-mandated, that we don't say we can't do anything at this point because we don't want to discourage it. That we have said year after year, and we've never done anything to change that so that we don't get in a point that we're backed in a corner. In other words, we have to address it. If it's an issue, don't come to the point where we say, well, we can't say that now because it'd be too hurtful, because that's always been our scapegoat when it comes to the stewardship responsibility of dollars that we maybe don't have. So I'm just saying we need to look at that.
So with those 2 things, I mean, I wonder if when we have
I have a
our.
third.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want the Hubbard to be a line item. I don't know the amount that would suffice for them. They would be better able to answer that, but I would like them to be a line item. And I think that maybe we don't even do discretionary funds
Well, I think you have to look
into
at
the
that.
future. We honor what we have done.
I-
There's absolutely
I think we need a
no question
policy
about
that
it.
defines how
Yes.
something becomes a line item.
Yeah.
We cannot say we value this, we have to
Well,
have
sure,
criteria.
because if you
and
say it
have
for
a
one, you
solid
gotta know.
policy.
Yeah,
So-
no, I agree with that, but and I agree with what you're saying, because it connects to things that we say, and do we know our community? If you look at 20.9% of our population is, elderly population lives alone, and how important is socialization? I mean, those things tell you something about where are we meeting that need. But, yeah, and you can be sure that everybody that applies to Lloyd K. Johnson or any of these other things, not everybody gets funded.
Oh, right,
Oh,
and
right.
not
And
everybody
people-
got funded that did
Yeah.
apply for this.
And so when people ask, why aren't we funded? And this is the first year we've actually given out memorial grants on behalf of our daughter. And we had a number of applications, and I created a matrix that was a discipline, because it can get so emotional. And I said, I'm not saying take emotion out of it, but we need the discipline to go through. And then to keep that funding source there, the interest earned on investment is what we will allocate each year, otherwise we'll be done. We can't spend money, we need to have a funding source that's consistent. So I think that a policy that disciplines us is important.
So what I was gonna recommend is when we have, and we need to set the dates for
Yeah.
this, so I'll send an email out trying to confirm dates for strategic planning day. But I'm also wondering if we have a couple hours and have a work session set aside to plan the next year's budget process, which would include policy, and then a timeline. And actually, I don't know that we need a special meeting. We could perhaps use a cow to do
Mhm.
this, but do that February or March so that we
Yeah.
have a timeline ahead of. Okay.
I would recommend that, Brady, yourself, whomever, that we identify everything that we are doing right now.
What does that mean?
That means that we've got the things that you outlined in your overview that you gave us in the email tells departmentally what we're doing. Okay, so then we say, what else are we doing? Well, we have revolving loan that we're doing. We have the funding that's, everything that we're funding, every place that dollars are going. We should identify all of those things. We've talked about the fact that when we look at governance, what are those things that are mandated and what are those things that are discretionary? We should identify everything that we're aware of right now in those two categories, because that's what we're going to have to do as far as an assessment, and then a policy informs how we sift through that.
So if I may, real quickly, I see those as two separate things. So we have the funding that we give to other organizations as discretionary. And then what I'm hearing you say is the internal operations, what we're doing that's mandated versus non-mandated. And that's what you're asking for us to collect, correct?
Well, correct, but I see those all, everything that we've got our fingers in right now is, and it's like the highway department saying, here's everything that we do, and here's some things that we shouldn't necessarily be doing. And so I'm saying we need to put it in the context of the whole. Yes, departmentally, mandated, and those things that aren't mandated. The thing with the mandated is it's telling you what you have to do, and the other things that we have chosen to do, whether they're internally within our governance or outside with the discretionary and those things.
And we can do that in buckets of work. I think for us to take the time to collect every single thing that we do would be a huge amount of time for staff. So
Okay.
we can think about how we can collect that and do
Yeah.
that, but I'm a little bit worried about expending
Sure.
a ton of
Yeah,
resources
and
to
I'm not
collect
looking for a
everything.
lot of detail.
Okay.
I'm just saying, you could sit down and write down. That's why I think that a few people would probably have an awareness of that by just sitting, all
I
you do
see.
is write the heading. Don't write the particulars and the detail and flesh it out. Just give us the heading.
Commissioner Sullivan?
I just wanted to come back to the policy that the city of Grand Marais developed, and one of the things it says is if the city is going to support any activities by a nonprofit, it will be in the form of a service agreement. So it is a service agreement that is required, and it is a one-time grant.
A lot of our obligation is driven by owning the building.
And that is true. And that's another thing we need to look at. What is the land? What are the buildings that we own? And should we own them?
Yeah. I agree. Because what
Well-
happens is that you have people asking for money and then
Another
they-
fun thing.
They say, I want to be a line item because they don't like to have to go all the work to ask for something and not know where they're going to get it. And people, when you talk to them, then they say, what we need to do is we need to get a building that the county owns because then we got a shoe in. We've got to be careful that, you know.
Okay.
Anyway, I'll be quiet.
Anything else? All righty. Administrator Treble has her list. I have my list, you have your list. Brady.
It's a collective list, I'll share it with you.
Thanks, everyone, so
Appreciate
much
it.
for your input, for the folks who join us now and later. And being no other business, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
And we can leave, oh wait, we'll just go across the hall.
Well, I feel like this is job security because.
It depends upon how you handle it.
Yeah, that's my positive way of.
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, we've just